Thanks for coming out. I think they changed my podium. I feel like I'm exposed here because now I used to have a full solid thing. So it's feeling, no, I'm good. I'm good. We're going to get started today. We're going to start, Larry is here. We're going to do the invocation, and then I'll go through the agenda real quick for you. So Larry, all yours.
Let us be in a spirit of prayer. Celebration. This is a time of great celebration. We just concluded our national celebration on July 4th with parades and fireworks. The 4th of July celebrates the passage of the Declaration of Independence from the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776. The Declaration announced the political separation of the 13 North American colonies from Great Britain. The celebration continues. We continue to celebrate the 150th birthday of our beloved Lakeside. Great amount of planning and execution of those plans have gone on to make this the 150th year of Lakeside, one to remember. In the words of Cool and the gang, celebrate good times, come on. There's a party going on right here, a celebration to last throughout the year. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We're gonna celebrate your party with you. Once again, we come together here in Orchestra Hall to pause and to listen to the business side of Lakeside, to take time out from our celebration to share concerns and ideas on the governance of our Chautauqua, and to assure that we stay true to the 4 pillars that are the foundation of this place we call Lakeside. We come with concerns, but we come in celebration. We come rejoicing. Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Philippians stated, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. We seek thy guidance as we conduct this July 8th meeting of our Property Owners Association. Celebrate good times. Come on, it's a celebration. 150 years of Lakeside. Everyone around the world of Lakeside, come on. It's a time for celebration in God's special place, in our special place, because of a special vision begun in 1873, here in our Lakeside Chautauqua on the shores of Lake Erie. Amen.
All right, good morning. Welcome to our July meeting. Is anybody else going to have celebration in their head all day now? I think so. So I hope everybody is having a great summer. The Lakeside is in full swing, and there are have been a lot of people here, especially in the last week or so. Hopefully you're enjoying all the shows. I've got a monster band here tonight, I think, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So that will be very interesting. Band that's been around, I think, 60s, right? 60s? 50s? 60s, definitely. So hope you're enjoying all of that. I'm going to go through the agenda real quick because we're going to make a little bit of a switch today. I'm going to welcome new property owners here in a moment. Just some important information on some dates coming up. So there's several meetings lined up over the next couple months. I just want to make sure that you're completely aware of. We're going to approve the minutes from the May 20th meeting, and so I sent those out. Hopefully you had a chance to review those. We'll just do a quick approval for that. We have our treasurer report today. Tom Ramsdale's here to go over our current budget situation. Today's a big day for LPOA elections. So we take nominations to serve on the LPOA Executive Committee. And today, based on, not everybody comes up at the same time. Today we have 2 director positions, the treasurer position and the secretary position that are up for nominations. Only one person is terming out. Carol Robertson has used all her terms, and so that spot will open up. I'll go through some more information at that time, and then we'll take nominations. I do have some names that I'm aware of, and then we also take them from the floor. So if there's anybody out there that's interested in being nominated. The only requirement is they have to know you're nominating them. So don't nominate your neighbor there just because you might be mad at them or something. And then I'll do a quick board report for this month. Streets and drainage, we're actually going to move to the very end. So the presentation we have for today is the same one that was presented last week. So if you were there at the community forum and you saw the streets and drainage, if you remember, they asked you to think about what you saw that day and think about maybe what your thoughts are about the best way to proceed. Same presentation today, but we didn't want to assume that all of you were at last week's meeting. So we're going to put that at the very end after the Q&A. If you saw it last week and you don't want to see it again, you're welcome to go out and enjoy your day. If you saw it last week and you want to see it again, great. We'll be here, and we can also do some Q&A. But we're going to put that at the end just so you can have the opportunity to go out and enjoy Lakeside today. And then Charles is here to do a Lakeside update, and then we'll also do the Q&A, and then we'll do the streets and drainage after that. So hopefully that all makes sense. All right, next item. We're going to do what we do every meeting and welcome any new property owners that might be attending our meeting today. So this would be, if you haven't been recognized at a meeting before, even if you bought your house 5 years ago, or if you bought your house since the last meeting, we'd love for you to stand up, introduce yourself, tell us which property you have, and maybe just a tidbit on your history with Lakeside. So do we have any new property owners here today? Nobody ever raises their hand immediately, and then they just kind of, oh, see, I knew it right there. They're bringing a microphone to you right there.
Oh, wow. Wow. Is it all this official?
It's official.
Okay. Hi, I'm Pete Myers. My wife and I, Meredith, bought 534 Maple 2 years ago.
Excellent.
Happy to be here. I'm from Bellevue, live in New York City now. It's the Brooklyn Bagel. So stop on by and say hello.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. Any other new property owners? Oh, right in the back. Morning.
Morning. Excuse me. Morning. Josh and Christy Scheider, my parents, Rich and Sue. We have Laurel Haas on 344 Laurel Avenue, and we purchased in 2019, just before COVID transformed the world.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else? Any other new property owners that might have just even walked in? If not, okay. I think that's it. All right, well, great. Well, welcome. Hopefully, I was thinking as they were introducing themselves, hopefully you had a chance to watch the video from last month's meeting. As you might have noticed, we moved on from the iPad recording, and Lakeside is officially recording it for us in here. And it's a great video, and you can see everybody, you can see the presentation. So if anybody is not able to attend the meetings, we have some great video of those meetings now. So, and you can let your neighbors know that about that we have those as well. So I want to go through some important dates, and Jane Anderson is also here to talk about a meeting coming up as part of the, it was an additional meeting that was added, but as you know, we've been having some community forums, which the board wanted to do last year after hearing that the community would like to hear more directly from the board, and so that's what's been going on. But Jane, I'll have you come up, and I'll put some dates on the calendar, and you can talk about the meeting.
Thank you, Jeff. Next Friday, July 14th, mark your calendar, 1 o'clock right here. Please come to hear more about some of the questions that you may have had with regard to how our Lakeside Chautauqua is governed, how other Chautauquas may be governed. What's our past history? Bob Brucken, are you here? I hope, yes. He will also be at the meeting, having had the experience back in the 1980s. This is not the first time Lakeside has had the experience of looking to change its governance in a big way, and Bob will have some interesting historical perspective on that. But anyway, some of the questions that you would have had in the last few months regarding our governance, we heard you and scheduled a governance panel discussion, and there will be, bring your questions, bring your toughest questions, because there will be time throughout that panel discussion to ask questions of some governance experts, some of whom are here in this audience today. So next Friday, 1 o'clock, right here. Hope you can come. Thank you. Question? Will that be recorded? Recorded, yes, I believe so. Can we verify that?
Yeah, we got a thumbs up on that.
Thumbs up, and that's why it's here. We were thinking it may be in Wesley Lodge, but this is the place where it can be recorded. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
So that's July 14th coming up quick. So that'll be here. In fact, all the meetings that I have on the slide for you are currently scheduled to take place here. And if something changes, we will let you know. But I'll go through the rest. So there's another, as I mentioned, there were 4 community forums that were scheduled for the year. The third one will take place on August 5th. And the plan for that day is to talk about Lakeside financials. So Charles and the finance team with Lakeside will be there that day and discuss what does the financial environment at Lakeside look like, and how does Lakeside take in funds and spend its funds. So that's the plan for August 5th. And then August 12th, we have our next LPOA meeting. And at that meeting, in addition to other items on the agenda, we will actually hold our election for our LPOA Executive Committee. So any nominations we take today, the election for that will take place next month at our August 12th meeting. And then I don't have anything scheduled in between, though things could get scheduled, but our last meeting of the year is currently scheduled for October 7th, right here. And then on October 14th, the following Saturday, the final community forum for Lakeside will take place. So I will update any new information that comes out through our emails, but that's current meeting schedule planned for this year. 2 things I also wanted to remind you about, and this both went out in recent emails. As you remember from our last meeting, Lakeside is looking to hear from you on any drainage issues you might be having related to your cottage. So as you know from the streets and drainage presentation that happened at the last meeting, also happened at the community forum you'll hear about today, Lakeside would like to hear from you. You know, obviously you may have reported some of this information before, but make sure Lakeside is aware of any drainage issues. So I've got a couple links up here. The first one is to go report your drainage issues directly to Lakeside. And then the second one, a succession planning survey went out. As you know, Lakeside is in the process of going through CEO hiring process. Lakeside wanted to hear directly from property owners. So they're collecting that information. They know that you're a property owner. They asked that information. So they've asked that you give your direct input into that process. What do you want to see in a CEO? And that survey closes, the succession planning survey closes on Monday. So if you haven't put your information in there yet, please do so. That survey will close out on Monday. If you want to take some pictures of those, that slide, I'll get the links out when I get an email, but it probably will not go out before Monday. So if you want the second one, take that picture now. Yes, ma'am. Did you have a question? For the succession? I can ask that question. I don't know that, I know that committee wants to get started, but I'll ask that question later today and see. But I would say, if take that, write it down. I'll leave it up there for a quick second. Any other questions? Okay. I can put that back up later as well. Okay. After following our last meeting, I sent out minutes for our May 20th meeting, and I'd like to get an approval for those minutes from the group. if I can get a motion for approval. I've got a motion here. Do I have a second, please? Got a second right there. Do I have any questions about the minutes? I've got a question. Let's get a mic right there. Yes, sir.
Richard Hahn, 41 Maple. I looked at the minutes and they're so cryptic. You really need to go to the full video replay of the meeting. For example, the Drainage Committee Task Force report is a one-liner saying the task force gave their report, period. No indication that it wasn't the $35 million bond issue that was on the table a year ago. No indication that there's discussion of any increase in assessment. There's no detail at all. So if you look at the minutes, you have to go and replay the entire video to get any substantive information.
Thank you. Yeah, that is true with the video and the fact that if you want very specific questions or details from the meeting, the minutes are brief, limited for our meetings. We do that sort of on purpose since you can watch the entire video and get the full, every single question, every single comment through the video link. So it's a true statement. Thank you for that. Do we have any questions, comments? Any additional ones? If not, we'll do a raised hand for approval. Can I get an approval for the minutes from the May 20th meeting? All right, any opposed? Raise your hand. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you for the approval for the minutes for May 20th. All right, next we're going to do a treasurer's report. And so, Mr. Ramsdale, if you want to come up and talk about, this is a little bit of our slow season from Lpoa, but we did want to give you an update, and I'm going to put that on the screen for you.
Great.
If I can do it. All right. We'll start there, and I can scroll.
All right, well, good morning. As Jeff mentioned, even though we're smack dab in the middle of a busy Chautauqua season, the financials for Lpoa do kind of slow down this time of year. As you can see, at the beginning of June, we started off with a balance of $17,366. Our income for the month, we had $60 in dues and memberships. That's because as cottages are sold, new members will join throughout the year. We did have some advertising revenue come in that was for advertising in our directory, so we had total income of $510. Our expenses pretty much are due to our contracted employee that does all the work in putting the directories together. We pay her on a quarterly basis, and of course reimburse her for her expenses. So the majority of our expenses were the contracted employee.
Larry's getting on you for not using
I'm sorry, Larry. So total expenses of $1,782, leaving us a balance as of June 30th of $16,093, which will last us through the rest of the calendar year. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
I have to stand up. I'm going to do it from here. My name is Richard Dietz. I live 644 Maple Avenue. Why are we paying bank fees?
That is the charge. That's the charge that the bank gives to us for allowing us to give them $16,000 to hold on to our money.
So why aren't we going to another bank that doesn't charge fees?
For the convenience of having to run to the bank, it's the closest bank that gives us the
So
best deal.
you put the money in Marblehead, I guess.
Right now, the account is with Huntington.
Huntington and Genoa charges nothing. So,
I can check those out.
oh,
for
I
you,
know
but-
for a fact because I have a business and I'm there
Okay.
and there's no fees. So I kind of wonder why we're spending fees when we don't have to.
Well, I will tell you this too. The fee is $5 a month, And if our account goes below 10,000, it's $20 a month. So if there's a better deal out there, we should look into it. yes.
Genoa.
Okay, and there is a Genoa Bank here now, close in I believe, the Bassett Supermarket spot, so I'll check them out.
I don't mean to be condescending with the comment, but I just don't get paying bank service fees when we don't have to.
Okay,
It's a cost that's, actually Genoa is closer than Huntington. So
all right,
that's all.
we can check it out. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good question there. We will take a look at additional options for our banking services. Also, in August next month, we'll start talking about, our goal every year is to, spend our money. We spend it on directories, obviously. And then we try to end up with a balance somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 at the end of the year, which means the rest of the money we donate to causes that we like. So we've donated to the Lakeside Heritage Society in the past. Last year we donated to the 150th celebration. We also donate to usually Danbury Police and some other groups. So start thinking about, perhaps where you'd like to. I know we had a short discussion last year about it. The executive committee will start talking about it, and then we actually make those donations in October. And so we'll do that again this year. But in the meantime, if I can get a motion to accept the financial report. I've got a motion right here. How about a second? We'll do right there. Do I have any other questions or comments around the financial report? Okay. And feel free, if you have some questions about it, I'll send this out after the meeting. If you have questions about how we're doing things with your financials, happy to talk about that. But I'll take can I get a vote for approval to accept the financial report from this month? All right. Any opposed to that? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. Lost my agenda. Okay, elections next. So today is a big day in that we take nominations for our Lpoa Executive Committee. So now the Executive Committee consists of a number of positions. So there's a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a secretary, a sergeant-at-arms, and a number of directors. And those positions are staggered, so not everybody comes up at the same time. So you're not having an entire executive committee turnover. They also have different terms. So, for example, my term as president, Mary Ann Kelmer's term as vice president is 2 years. The director positions are 3-year terms. And then we also have, of course, the representative to the Lakeside Board, which is a 3-year term. So today we have a couple positions that open up, and our terms run from April of the following year. So, for example, the nominations that we're taking today are for terms that start April 1st, 2024. So it's a little early. Just we try to do that in cycle with the Lakeside Board as well. So we're doing this early. It's the way we've done it for a long time. We've talked about ways to probably shorten that time. Obviously, we can get new people involved quicker than that, but the official term starts April 1st, 2024. And today we have 4 positions that are open. 2 directors out of the 5 that I think we have that's serving on there, plus a treasurer position, and plus a secretary position. I think I mentioned at the beginning, one of our directors, Carol Robertson, who's mic running for us today, has served. This is the end of her 6th year, I think. Is that right, Carol? Or longer? Yes. And we'll recognize Carol later this year. So we're going to do some nominations today. I did have folks reach out to me ahead of time, and so we do have some names. I know a couple folks that are on the executive committee that would like to do it again, so we'll take those names. What's going to happen is after we take all of those names, there's a nominating committee with the LPOA Executive Committee that will vet and just make sure that, one, they're actual members of LPOA, and then two, that they are willing to meet the requirements of it, which is attending our meetings, being a participant, working to address issues with LPOA. And so that will take place in the next 30 days before our next meeting in August. So I will start by taking some nominations, and then I know there's some of them were going to be floor nominations. Some people had asked me to make sure they were nominated. So we'll just kind of go with the flow and see what comes from the floor, and then I'll give you additional names with that. So we'll start with the 2 director spots, and I'll just start with one because I know he's interested. He's a current member of the LPOA Executive Committee. He also serves on the Streets and Drainage Committee. So Ron Yonke is up for a term. He was appointed previously, so he is willing to serve for another term, so he is asked to put his name in. He could not be here today. So there's one. So let's do some floor nominations for the director position, if that sounds good. And then we're going to bring mics to you before. So I've got one right here, Larry, right there in the middle. And I'm going to take some notes. So
Gretchen Curtis. I just like clarification.
Sure.
When someone is appointed to fill a vacant, as you just announced this person was, is it if they serve more than half a term, that counts as a term? Where is the limit on replacement as a new term entirely, beginning of the 2?
Yeah, if usually what has happened in the past, if someone's appointed to finish out a term, it's you just finish out whatever the original term was. So we keep it the same schedule. So that way we don't have, we don't mix it up where people are coming off at the same time, too many at the same time. So for example, when Ron came on, he came up to finish a term. He didn't get to start a brand new 3-year term. So hopefully that makes sense. Answer your question. Okay, good. I've got another question or a nomination in the back, I think.
5 East 5th.
Okay. I'm going to have you repeat one more time. I got cut off right at the beginning.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Doug Talbot, 705 East 5th as one of the director positions.
Okay, thank you very much. Doug Talbot. And Doug had reached out to me as well and is interested in serving. And the nominating committee will work on that to make sure that he's good. Do I have any additional floor nominations? Did I see a name down here or a hand down here? I got one right down here, Larry.
Hi, I'm Connie Roop. I'd like to nominate Richard Dietz for the director position.
Very good. Thank you, Connie. And so I know Richard is here and had a good question about our financials earlier. So thank you for that. Do we have any other floor nominations? Otherwise, I'm going to give a couple of nominations myself. So Glenn Becker has reached out and would like to serve on LPOA. And so nominating committee will work on that. And then also Bruce McLean. Now, I think, I can't remember if Glenn said he was going to be here, but Bruce said he was not. Oh, Glenn is here. Okay, Glenn. So Glenn, is that still true you would like to serve? Yes, sir. Yes, okay. All right, so Glenn Becker and then Bruce McLean. So right now for the 2 director spots, I have 5 names. Do I have anybody else that's interested in serving as a director? Now, while you're thinking about whether you want to do it or not, so what we'll do next month is we will vote here by paper because that's how you do things in Lakeside. And so we will have the voting rolls, and to be a voting member of LPOA, you need to be in good standing so that you've paid your dues. You are also listed as a leaseholder on your property, or you're the trustee on your property. So it's very, I would say it's clear in our bylaws, but it's also written as bylaws, so maybe not. But if you have interest in that, take a look at our bylaws. It's something that when I joined the LPOA a few years ago that we took a close look at. Rick Green was on and helped us write those bylaws to make sure that they were correct and that was the right way to do it. So we'll have that information next month. We'll give everybody a paper ballot that you can vote our executive committee today talked about it. Typically in the past, we've sequestered them during this meeting, which is a little unfair because they are a part of this meeting. So I'm thinking we might do our voting as soon as the meeting is over next time. Haven't completely thought that through, but I don't like the executive committee not being in here and getting to hear your questions and comments. So I don't know exactly how we'll do it next month, but it will take place. If you have questions about that, I can answer them today, or you can reach out between. I do have a question right here, though, I believe.
So we have 5 candidates
For director.
2 positions.
Correct, right now.
How will we do that election? Will it be a runoff until we get down to?
We'll just we'll do straight votes, and whoever has the 2 highest vote totals.
Do we vote for 2 people?
Yes.
But you could.
You could vote for 1.
Well, you could vote for 1.
You could vote for 1. If you vote for 3, it's going to be.
Not doing the arithmetic in my head too well this morning. It seems like the people that win would have a strong minority vote,
Maybe.
not a majority.
Potentially.
But most likely with that number,
Yeah, potentially.
would you consider a runoff type where we eliminate some number of candidates and like vote for the top 3 in a second election?
Well, we would have to change our bylaws, I believe, to do that. And I don't know for sure. It seems like that would be something that we could consider, but probably not this year. But we have a question right here.
It wasn't clear to me, but would the role of the nominating committee, are they going to accept all 5, or are they going to recommend and bring forward 2?
Yeah, we talked about that, and I think that this executive committee right now is not going to take a stance about some running, not running. I think if you're interested in serving with LPOA, then we would like to have you come serve with LPOA. And even if you're not elected, we like to have you on committee. So I don't think the nominating committee is going to take a stand other than going to make sure that they're eligible. Now, what I will do is everybody's going to provide a bio that the names you've heard today, and those bios will go out before the meeting next month. So you'll have a chance to read about these folks. And also we'll have bios for you when you come in next month. So you can, if you can read them before the meeting, and you can read them at the meeting. So you'll know these people if you don't know them yet. And I do have another question in the back, I believe. Right? No? Oh, I did. Okay. Well, there you go. All right. So sorry about that. We did the 5. Oh, I do have another question right here. So.
Richard on 401 Maple. In the past, we've had not just the bio, but a statement of why you would like to serve on the LPOA Executive Committee, and also a personal appearance, a short 2-minute intro in front of a meeting. Is that a possibility?
The statement, definitely. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. I will include that in my request to the folks that were nominated. I think we could do, stand up. I do know at least 1 or 2 that can't be here next month. And they asked, because the question was, do I have to be present to win? And you don't have to be present to win. So I don't know that that's fair for all of them. But we can ask for a statement. And perhaps, maybe I can ask for a picture as well, if that helps, if you just do it from visual. So if that helps a little bit. Okay, now I've kind of got off track. So we were doing the director. We had 5 nominations. I'm going to move to treasurer. So Tom was up here a moment ago. Tom and I have talked. Tom is interested in serving another term as treasurer. So I'm going to add him to the list. Is there anybody else interested in serving as treasurer from the floor? Yep, okay. And then the last one, I have a secretary position that is open. So our previous secretary, just earlier this year, moved off the grounds, and so we lost our secretary. I did not fill it because I knew we had election this summer. So we have a secretary position. Is there anybody interested in being nominated for secretary position? I will say that among these 5, that if we don't have, whoever is not elected out of these 5, I likely will ask one of you to be secretary if we don't have an election. So once you volunteer, you have volunteered. So just to make me totally transparent how that's going to work. Okay. Okay, so just rounding out here, I have 5 nominations for the two director positions. I have 1 nomination for treasurer. I have 0 nominations for secretary, which we'll solve after August. We'll have an election next month. Anybody listed on the lease as the trustee. If you have multiple properties, it's listed in the directory. But if you have multiple properties, you get 1 vote. You get 1 vote. And so, but you can go through those bylaws. If you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to us. And we'll have the rolls and voting slips and all that stuff for you next month. You do have to be here to vote. You can't send your kids to vote for you. You have to be here. It's voting in person. There's no online voting, no early voting, none of that. So the... is there any other questions about voting that I didn't cover? Okay. Well, good. I can tell you that this is the first time in 4 or 5 years that we've actually had an election. So it's exciting. It's one of the things that I was hoping for. I'd like to see more involvement. You know, we want to get our committees active. We want to be a better voice for you. And I think to do that, we get this whole group being active. So thank you for the nominations I got today, and I appreciate it and look forward to more of you volunteering in the future. So I do have one more question here.
Jeff, could you speak briefly what the duties are of each of the positions and responsibilities?
Sure.
Thank you.
But instead of making it up, I'll read from the bylaws if that's okay. And I'll summarize as well. But yeah. Okay. We were just looking at it this morning. So the secretary position that keeps all of our records, all the proceedings of our meetings, of the executive committee and in here, sends out all correspondence, gives notice of meetings and all that. All the correspondence you get today comes from me, which is why it's not, very embellishing. So the treasurer position, keeps all records of membership, all payments of dues, funds, everything else that comes in. Annually makes records available for an audit. The directors, the treasurer pays the bills. Thank you. Treasurer pays the bills. So the directors are simply voting members of the executive committee. So not specific assignments to do something. We do have committees within the executive committee. So we have a nominating committee. We have a bylaw committee. We'll have, and there's a, Mary Ann, what's the name of the committee with yeah, like a social membership committee. So we have committees through that. So the directors would serve on that as well. But we also are interested in having just community members serve on those committees. So does that help answer your questions about what everybody does? Perfect. I've got a question right here.
Thank you. If you answered this already, I'm sorry I missed it.
That's okay.
If you know of somebody who might be really good in one of these positions, but you haven't had a chance to ask them or speak with them about it, do we have an opportunity still to do that, or is it passed as of today?
It is passed of today.
Okay.
But that is a good question. So yes, as of today. But the good thing is we do this every year. So we have opportunities every year that will open up. So there's always opportunities to serve. If they're not put into one of the executive committee. As I mentioned, we do have other committees that we'll take volunteers for. So if somebody's interested in just getting involved, they don't have to go through the election process. Happy to take them, put them where their interests lie, and then and do it that way. Same question. Good. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So next month, election. Thank you again for the nominations. That's great. And we'll move on to the next item. Board report. So you're probably aware the Lakeside Board has not met in person since the last LPOA meeting. The board met the day before the last one. The next board meeting is scheduled for August 4th, so about a month from now. And so, but we did have a Zoom meeting recently to talk about, you know, things that they're hearing from the community, and I think in the community forum, you heard from Jane Anderson and other board members talking about, you know, potential changes. Today, I left this agenda item here because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the LPOA rep and the board rep to LPOA board rep to the Lakeside Board. So we talked about that last month, and I had mentioned that that position was going away, and instead a new clause was written into the board bylaws to making 65%, I think this is the number, of board members property owners. And I'll tell you, I'm going to take full responsibility on this because I think I misread the room on how important it was for you to have a direct say on who's representing you to the Lakeside Board. You know, I think there was a clear message on that was something that you did not feel was right. In addition, that is also a bylaw change, and is something that we should have considered as a change of bylaws instead of making it. So I've had conversations with Jane and with members of the board. Now, I mentioned the board meets next month, but based on those conversations, I believe the board is open to reinstating that LPOA rep that was removed in the recent bylaw changes. So that is good. So that is a discussion item that will take place at our next month's meeting, and I feel good about that. That's a request from me, from you, through me, to the board. Elizabeth Irwin as well, that serves as your board rep right now. But in addition, in some of those discussions, we've also talked about, you know, maybe that's not enough. And based on the feedback that we hear is the property owners would like more direct input. And so we are also going to discuss adding an additional one in addition to the one that went away. So I think that's all good news, and I apologize for the way that worked and that we didn't discuss it as a group here, because I think that is a group item. And so all I can say to that is that we won't do that again. I can commit to you that we won't do it like that again. Hold on one second, but Larry, we'll have a question right over here in a moment. But yeah, we won't do that again. And so I don't know. I don't want to speak for the board. I can tell you that, you know, individual conversations I've had with board members, they are support right behind you there, Larry. That they're going to be supportive, I think. I want to discuss with them. So we do have a meeting about a week after the next board meeting. So I hope I'll have more information to share with you at that time. So, but I did want to bring that up today. I'm happy to answer questions about that. If we do get an additional board rep, so we haven't changed our bylaws since the previous change, and so reinstating is easy from our bylaw perspective. However, to add a new one, we do need to change the bylaws. And so my current thinking is that we'll redo bylaws, and we do need to do those. I mentioned that previously, and we need to have those done no later than our May meeting next year, because we need to put in the new LPOA rep, which means when we do our elections next year, that's where that could take place. And so my executive committee needs to talk about it as well. We could talk about doing, perhaps a direct vote like we do today. We could talk about the executive committee that you already vote for nominating somebody. I don't know. I do know it's great because then you'll have 3 direct members on the board, including myself. Those are rotating for the most part, so the board reps would be in separate years, rotating 3-year terms. It would match up with the president's term every now and then because the president's term is 2 years, but still would be a good situation. So I'll take, I know there was one question, but if there's any other questions, I'll take those as well around that. Yes, sir.
I just need clarification.
Sure.
The president of Lakeside Property Owners serves on the board.
Yes, sir. So I serve on the board, and I'm and also involved in several committees. I serve on the Lakeside Board Executive Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Municipal Services Committee.
So we have 2 representatives then from the board here.
Yeah, currently. Now, if you missed it, so the talk was that that second one was going to go away. And so the bylaws had been changed to remove that position, and instead a requirement of having 60% of the board members be property owners was put in. That's where I think I misread the room. We're going to change that back is the plan, at least the discussion, and then talk about adding a third one, including me, if that makes sense. So, do you have any other questions? I got a question right here in the middle there.
Gretchen Curtis, question of clarification.
Sure.
The board of the association has a finite number of members.
Yes.
If an additional member of the board of the association is specified as coming from the LPOA, will that be a part of that total number as it is on the board of the association? My question is it an additional member or comes in and takes a place of a current member?
That's a great question. I know that the governance committee of the board is planning on meeting. I think those are probably some questions still to be answered. As you know, we talked about a little bit, the board is interested in shrinking a little bit over time. I think that's probably a good thing, just in my opinion. So I think, and the board hasn't met, so I don't know. Jane could probably give input, but I'd say it's probably unknown exactly how that will work today, but Jane took the mic, so I'm gonna let her answer.
You did a great job. Where are you, Gretchen? There you are. Right now, the board is at 17 to 19 members, and that has not changed at this point, and there's no plan to change it at this point, but what's going to be really important as we move forward is to be more in lockstep with the LPOA with regard to the diversity of the board. As I mentioned before, we use a diversity matrix. We need certain skills to serve on the Finance Committee, the Audit Committee. If you're an Audit Committee person, please raise your hand, because it's hard to find those people really interested in audit, except my great friend Cindy Mall, who is just great at what she does. And then we also have a Municipal Services Committee. Now this is where Jeff serves as well. Really important, because we do deal with many issues that pertain to property owners, cottage owners, I should say. And then we also have a governance committee. So when those openings do come up in the LPOA, we will be in close communications with LPOA leadership, letting you know, all right, we have a finance expert stepping off of the board. Anybody out there, finance experts from LPOA, please raise your hand to represent the LPOA on the board. Does that make sense, Gretchen? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the mic.
Great, thank you, Jane. So more to come on that, and so I hope to be able to give you a good update in August, based on governance committee meeting, based on the board meeting in early August. And then at that point, we'll need to take steps to make things happen, so it won't be automatic. obviously the current board rep, Elizabeth Irwin, this is her first year of her term. So her term is active. It will not go away. She's on she serves as a representative today. And so you have one today, you have myself today. The goal would be potentially to add another one that we could take care of by next year. And so, and have that person serve. And then we'll have some rotation. So, but I think it's great. And so if you have ideas, if you have concerns, if you don't think property owners the board's hearing the property owners, you can come to us. I sit in those meetings. I'm in there to represent you. I want to hear from you. The executive committee of the LPOA met this morning. They want to be a better representative. They want to be, doesn't mean that we'll always agree, but the executive committee would like to be the ones talking with you to help be better reps of the board. So if you can help us do that, if you can let us know how the best thing to do, that would be great. I do have a question here in the back.
The question is, will you retain the 60% requirement as well as the additional person?
Again, I think it's a good question. Not speaking for the whole board, I don't know. I would assume that might be it, but until they meet, I don't know. So I apologize, I don't have that, but I'll get that information for future meeting if that works for you.
It does. An editorial comment, I was on the board when it was 40 people.
Oh.
And it was a far better board than we've had for quite a number of years. There were people from every block. There were people that didn't do work, but that's okay. We reduced it to 25, and I had that experience, and I didn't think it was as efficient a board, honestly, as the 40. So, although you've reduced it further, I caution you that in reducing it, you may lose representation that's important to Lakeside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell you that the board members that I work today are great and very dedicated and put in a lot of work into that board. And I serve on a school board that has 5, and sometimes I think that's too many. So, yeah, I think it depends. I see the work that this board puts in, and they do a really good job. So, yeah, I think it's always trying to figure out the best way to support this community. And I'm talking about Lakeside as a whole community, and so that's sort of why we're all here, right? So, yes, right there.
Yeah, just quickly, voting or non-voting. As I understand, Elizabeth Irwin is a non-voting member of the board, or was when she was elected by LPOA, whereas you are a voting ex officio member of the board. So the governance committee needs to consider whether Elizabeth Irwin is voting, non-voting, and an additional person is voting or non-voting.
Yeah, Elizabeth is a voting member, so she is a voting member.
Not according to the old bylaws. The old bylaws said the elected rep of LPOA was a non-voting member of the board.
Yeah, I'll have to check on that.
When she was elected, and that was the bylaws that created her position, but it was a non-voting position.
Okay, I will check on that. But Elizabeth, I believe, is a voting member, and the new person would be a voting member as well. But I can clarify that. Yeah.
I was an elected board member, and I was voting.
Yeah, I think that's been the case, but I have to review. So she's been voting. So.
Can I ask a question?
You can, Larry, who runs the mic for us every meeting, even last month when he was with a crutch, can ask a question, absolutely.
If they are voting members, what does the term ex officio mean?
Well, maybe somebody that is much more versed in board governance can give a better answer than I'm about to give.
It means that they're not elected to the position, but they have the position because of other positions that they have. For example, Jeff Beach was not elected to the Lakeside Board by the Lakeside trustees. He was elected by this organization, which made him an ex officio member also of the Lakeside Board.
Well, with voting rights.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that information.
That is by far better than I would have said. So yes, and then Mr. Hahn, we'll clarify make sure that we've got the bylaws written right, but Elizabeth is a voting member of the board, as am I. Any other questions about that? So good. Well, I'm excited about that. I think that's a great direction to go in. Hopefully you agree. Again, if you have additional comments, concerns, happy to take a look at that going forward. So next, I mentioned we're going to switch it up a little bit. Dave Blank's here. He's very excited to talk about streets and drainage today. But we're going to push him off just a hair bit longer because Charles is going to come up. We'll do some Q&A if you have general Lakeside Q&A. Then we'll do a quick pause because if anybody doesn't want to stay for streets and drainage, we'll let you go. And then we're gonna everybody have to come down front, and then we'll do a streets and drainage discussion. Okay? All right, Charles, you have the floor. You want your...
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to say thank you to Jeff for his leadership of the LPOA and the LPOA. Got to speak up. Yes, sir. Thank you. Just wanted to say thank you to Jeff and his leadership and the executive team of LPOA for all the hard work that they do, and if we can just give them a round of applause for Jeff and I meet quite frequently to just talk about issues that you all have, and and our commitment to each other is that in those meetings some things can be handled operationally, and then we'll take those issues on and try to address them as the best we can, and then whatever needs to go to the board, I always support that for the best interest of you all here at Lakeside. And so I'm grateful for his partnership in that space because he truly cares for Lakeside and to make sure he's representing the homeowners accurately on a regular basis. We are in halftime. We're 7 weeks in, and I think things are going well. Some of you may have other issues and think differently. But I think overall, I want to just say thank you to our team and everyone who makes this season possible. A couple of things I want to touch on, and then if we have enough time, we have Gretchen, Jeannie, and Sam here as well. They will give their update and all of that. Excuse me for taking my time and talking slowly. Not really feeling too well this morning, but just wanted to make sure we have get everything out properly without getting into my head too much. First of all, I want to say we are hosting the Chautauqua Trail this year. August 10th through the 13th, and there were other Chautauquas around the United States come together and just share experiences, dialogue about change, and learn from each other. Part of that is most of them have made their accommodations, but they wanted to know and how many of our homeowners would be willing to open up their home or host them for an overnight or and just in that. If you're interested in hosting anyone from other Chautauquas, you can contact Gretchen Colon, our VP of Marketing and Advancement, and she can give you all those details. But I think it's great that they're going to be here with us to help us celebrate our 150th, and be able to learn what we're doing. We're able to learn what they're doing, and just sharing those resources. Couple other things. I think overall this season is off to a great start. Our staffing in some departments are a little lower than what we anticipated or hoped for, but we're still experiencing labor shortages due to COVID. And then we're in a very competitive market. There's only so many people who come to the peninsula to work, and so many people who are living here. One of the conversations I had with Larry Fletcher from Shores and Island is that there is the more vacationers and people purchasing properties for Airbnb, the less long-term residents there are in the peninsula, so that's also causing a worker shortage as well. And then so we're competing with CIC, Walmart, Kroger's, and et cetera, that are around here. So but overall, I want to say thank you to our HR team for the job that they've done. I believe our recruiting, Becky Doak has done a wonderful job with recruiting top-notch interns. We've developed strong partnerships with colleges in their employment aspects, and so we're doing extremely well with our internships. And overall, we have approximately about 185 employees serving you all right now throughout this season. We want to say thank you to them. Also, I want to give you an update on the Western Shoreline project. All permits have been filed. We received all permits have also been granted to us for the work that's needed. So KS is going to continue their process through all of that. We had to submit a joint use agreement. So the money was awarded to us, and Doug Talbert was back there, I believe, helped us with that. And so the money was awarded to us by the state. However, we still have to go through ODNR to receive the money. And being that we are a private community, we have to either have a public pass-through, which would have been Ottawa County, or put together a joint use agreement. And we did that with Danbury. So that joint use agreement is in review now with ODNR. We're very positive, they're very positive that that will be accepted. One of the positives of our joint use agreement is that 9 months out of the year, there is no charge to come into Lakeside. So it's open to the public. Thank you, yes. The other, only one person is excited about that. So that means we can charge everybody else gate fees for the rest of the year? All right, cool. The other one is we have a shop and dine pass that is also free, and a worship service pass, which is also free on Sundays. So that allows the public to come in and enjoy the lakefront without a charge during our season. And so with those two things added on the joint use agreement, was been pretty favorable that we're not closed off to the public, and that will be granted and awarded to us. So I want to just say thank you to Doug Talbert, Gretchen Cologne and her team, as well as Jim Schweitzer and our finance team for helping us with all of those concepts and putting all that together. Any questions about the Western Shoreline before we get started on that? Awesome. We will have another town hall once we have approval from ODNR, just to refresh everyone on the design, concepts, and what we're doing moving forward with that. We also want to look at some of the, we have staff, which is one of our challenges also, again, because we do have some people retiring at the end of the fiscal year. Also want to give an update on Dave Geyer, who some of you may or may not know, had to have a double bypass and going back into the hospital to have another surgery later in the week. And so, but been in contact with his wife, and he's doing fine, recovering well, but he's going to be out for a while, and he is also one of those that will be retiring at the end of the fiscal year. A lot of organizational knowledge. Not only have Dave is, I think, our longest employee here. He knows where every body is buried, and figuratively and literally in the and so we have a few others. And so with that staff transition, these are opportunities for us to begin to look at, but they're also very challenging because some of the people that are retiring have a lot of organizational knowledge. And as we've found out through leadership transitions, both board and executive, you lose step. And so what we're doing now is making sure we have good succession planning in place, processes in place where we're not losing those steps. And so shout out, I want to give a shout out to Miss Loretta, who is also going to be leaving at the fiscal year. Thank you for clapping, because that gave me a chance to get something to drink. But she's done a wonderful job in her succession planning. Last year, she knew this time was coming. Came to me with a plan, her and Vern both, of what was needed. Wrote the job, helped us write the job description, helped us recruit, and now Kyle, who is working alongside of her this summer to learn everything that she knows. And so these are great succession plans that we want to make sure we continue in these processes of hiring and pairing and moving people along in that fashion. And so, but one of the great things that's also happening right now is that the American Bloom, the application is submitted. Gretchen Cologne, who's in the back, she was very instrumental in working with Loretta, and they've been on our property for the last couple days, just touring and seeing. And last night had an opportunity to speak with one of the people that was here touring the grounds, and he said that it's more than about the flowers that are being planted, but it's about the community and how the community works together, how the community supports each other. And so if we are awarded any recognition from them or anything in the future, it's not just because the plants and the gardens are beautiful, but it's because the people are beautiful and welcoming. And so I want to say he was very excited about Lakeside and what he's seen, the support that he's seen each other give to each other, and just the welcoming and the community building that's happening here inside of Lakeside. So give you all yourselves a round of applause for that. The other thing that we're looking at is how do we maximize accommodations throughout not just in our season, but in the fall seasons. And so we're going to be looking at spaces. I want to say thank you to our Land Management and Development Task Force, which at the October forum, you'll hear more about in their work. But the Lynn and Shar, we have two board members, Gwen Nichols and Greg Moore, that's serving on there, Chuck Baker, Tim Lar, and then we have a couple staff persons that are serving on that task force. And the work that they're doing to help us not to, one of the things is not to allow any other studies, master plan, or anything sit on the shelf, but to utilize that as a guiding factor to help us get closer to the master plan. and looking at other housing studies that's been done and utilizing all the work that's there to help us understand what we can do with vacant land as well as properties and so forth. But one of the unintended or byproducts that came out of that task force was the refreshing of our cabins and Wahomas, and I just want to say thank you to Shar for leading that charge and doing it with such grace. And I don't know if you've ever met Shar, but it's so hard to say no to her on anything. So, but she has done a great job in helping us understand that our buildings can some of them just need a little TLC, right? And if we can do that. And so we'll be putting that information out a little bit more of how you can help us refresh some of these things as help us go on. All it takes is a few dedicated people, a little bit of money, and determination, and we'll see transformation inside of Lakeside like never before. One of the interns that we have this year is, some of you know, a few years ago we had a building audit done. That building audit was good. It had it was not as complete as that I would have wanted it to be, because it didn't give me enough timelines on various plants and structures of how much time we have on a roof or so forth. And so we had an intern come in this year that her and Eugene Jacobs have been going through every one of our facilities that Lakeside owns and completing that building audit with estimations of costs, timelines, and so forth. That information will then be put over to our finance team, and they will work with me on creating our 5-year capital expenditure plan. And so, and how we will plan to go about renovating our buildings, replacing costs, and so forth. And so we just want to say thank you to Eugene Jacobs, as well as to that intern. And that was very interesting because we were trying to figure out the best way of doing that, because we had a company slotted to come in and help us finish that. It would have been an enormous amount of money. We were trying to save costs, and so Jim Schweitzer had an idea because he knew someone that had that field, was studying that field, and so we interviewed him. He was not available, but however, we just stayed down that path, and Rebecca Doak found us an intern that was highly qualified, already has a master's degree, and I believe working on a second or a third master's in construction and engineering. And so she's been able to come in, go to work, and then she's had a great community partner working along with her of Eugene Jacobs that has been very instrumental in helping us throughout this process. So those are some of the things that we see opportunities with, and that we will continue to move forward. With the not having fully staffed in our sanitation department as well as maintenance, we do have we have still put an emphasis on cleaning and maintaining our facilities. And I want to say Dave and Ty, their team of sanitation, has been great with all the mayflies they've had to clean up and keeping above all the trash. And sometimes kids trashing bathrooms at night. They have still stayed on top of all of that. And if you see things that are seemingly falling through the cracks, just please send us an email, let us know. We'll be glad to address that and try to make sure our teams are staying on top of that. I'll pause right there. I'm going to ask our team to come down and share within the what's going on in the foundation, program, and finance. But if you have any questions as relate to anything that was shared so far, we'll take those questions as well as they're coming. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
that was held at Wesley Lodge. That
Mhm.
was an excellent meeting, very well organized, and every table had the opportunity to provide a very, are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Every table had the opportunity to have a large piece of paper that they gave over. Okay, thanks. So, and and I was really looking forward to hearing the response to those large sheets of paper. I mean, there must have been 40 of them or something.
Mm-hmm.
But unless I missed it, I've tried to read it, every paper, and I haven't seen any follow-up to all those concerns. One of them really concerned me greatly. I mean, a lot of it concerned me. But one gentleman actually made a threat, so I was kind of wondering if he was approached and talked to and, have his concerns covered.
I don't recall a threat, so I don't know what the threat would have been. I will say at the last forum last week, Jane did address some of those issues. And after this meeting next week, in the board update, she will sort of give a recap of the meeting from last week, and so you will see that, and we will push that out through the LPOA. One of the reasons we haven't been putting it in the paper and mass communication is primarily because we're attracting people to come to Lakeside, and we don't want to show a lot of division or dissension. So we've just been pushing that through LPOA.
Division and dissension.
I know.
Okay,
But
and that threat was actually, I remember what the man said. He said, I'm here to help stop a war, and nobody's going to devalue my property. He was very angry.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry you forgot that. I'm sure Jane didn't forget it. But at any rate, I've been looking in the papers, and I think it's very unfair that you haven't included it in the papers so that people could come. And that is not showing transparency, because I'm not a property owner inside of Lakeside, but my house is only five houses outside of it. And I've been making, many years I made contributions, most specifically for the 4 pillars of the pillar of faith. But it's like, I've been coming here since the late 90s or the early 90s.
Yes, ma'am.
And I care about this community, and your gathering said it was open to other people. But if you don't inform them, then they can't come. So I'm really feel left out.
Let me say thank you for always contributing to Lakeside. And let me apologize to say, is not to say that people outside of Lakeside is not important. The paper is a designated communication for a lot of reasons. And I remember the comment of trying to say he's stopping a war, but I put it in the context of the emails and other things that have been put on the Talk of Lakeside, not in the aspect of a physical threat, but just in difference of opinions and approaches to board governance and so forth. And so we are addressing those things, and we will definitely let people know the best way we can to let you know how we've addressed those things. No, no. No. I'm sorry you feel that I ignored a threat. I take safety very seriously. we put it in the context of what was going on in the moment, the purpose of that meeting, and why he said it. Anything that would have been a threat towards the people of Lakeside, we would have addressed. This was in the context of verbal divisions between community and board, and we've addressed those issues. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and I just want to, go back to the opening prayer of, and which I've never heard Kool and the Gang mention in a prayer before, but only at Lakeside will you hear a prayer where Paul and Kool and the Gang is quoted in the same prayer. Thank you guys for your time. At this time, I'm going to have Gretchen, Foundation.
Just at a very high level, we're going to dive into this a little further with our board chair, Paul Hubbard, on August 5th. But we had record giving last year, last fiscal year, at $3.5 million. And we had more than 1,000 families jumping in to give, both to the Lakeside Impact Fund, the endowment, and also special projects that were happening across the grounds. And in the area of the Lakeside Impact Fund, many of you know that this supports lots of different areas across Lakeside each operational year. We raised $1 million connected with the Lakeside Impact Fund. This supports things like Preacher of the Week, also the Lakeside Symphony Orchestra, the recreation programs, and individuals can designate and direct their giving to support an area that they're passionate about. We also added around a little more than $200,000 to the endowment in new gifts. And these were lots of different gifts that both supported the general operations of of going to the endowment and specific endowment gifts for facilities and programs. To give you a snapshot of the endowment today, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in detail. We have roughly around $4 million that is designated to the general endowment and supports operations overall. You'll see that then the pillars are represented. We're growing the education endowment. Just 5 years ago, this was only at about $10,000. So we've grown the education pillar significantly. We've had families step forward and support 2 education weeks with gifts. Religious life is also growing significantly in the area of supporting the preachers of the week for each year. And then the symphony and the arts, this is supporting the symphony, symphonic and classical music, and the art show. This portion of the endowment is also growing, and it is now around $2 million. And then buildings and facilities, one of our largest portions of buildings and facilities is a Hoover endowment that was given by a family. And so that spins off a portion to help maintain Hoover. Today, to date, and I apologize, this is tracking a little behind because we did the presentation for last week, so this will have increased, but roughly today we've raised a little over $100,000 towards the impact. That's tracking the same as last year. And then in the area of restricted giving, which a lot of this restricted giving is supporting our 150th sesquicentennial program. And then the endowment is tracking at about 8,000 in new gifts this year. So we're about in the first quarter of the fiscal year and moving through strongly. So thank you to each one of you for your generosity in giving to date this fiscal year. It is tremendous what is happening last fiscal year and moving into this fiscal year.
Hi everyone. I'm not going to talk about numbers today. As we told last week in the community forum, we'll be discussing on financials and all the assessment and expenses in the next community forum in August. So we'll just give you an update on what's happening in the finance division. We were able to beat the budget last financial year. We generated a surplus of more than $1 million. Expenses were under control, much lesser than the budget. We increased the cash by $2 million. It includes the restricted cash also. We haven't drawn on line of credit for past few years. And we have spent about $350,000 last financial year on facility upgrade. We have successfully completed the financial audit, and the drafts are out, and the audit committee is looking at it, and we hope that to be approved in the coming week, which is a record time in the history of Lakeside. Not only that, there is no P&L adjustments, there is no comments on the management letter, and the drafts of the financials are ready. And what we are planning a 5-year, as Charles said, we are planning a 5-year capital expenditure and budget, and also we are going to start on 2024 budget very soon, so that we'll have it in time, before Christmas. And we have also implemented a sweep accounts in our bank accounts, where the money was lying idle. Now we are able to get more than $10,000 per month on those funds. What are the successes we had? We implemented a new ERP system. The first financial year we closed the new software, and it was very successful. And also the fixed asset module, which was manually done earlier, was brought into the system, and we closed this financial year fixed asset model in the new software. There's an improvement in the management reports that we submit to the CEO and COO, and also to the finance committee and the board. And we have a great team of people working in the finance department. It's not me or anybody else, it's the teamwork. And everybody has contributed successfully to it. Thank you. Okay. I just want to brief you on the ticket status. This was done for the last community forum. We were not able to present it. We have updated it, but we don't have it with us right now. We planned for 85,000 people days, and we are at 25,000 as on 25th of June, which is a good number and a 4% increase of last year. We were planning for about 10%, and we had 4% at the end of June. And the season passes, we budgeted about 1280 and we are in 1335. We exceeded the budget. And there is a growth in all sectors like kid passes and youth passes. And we planned about 5.3 million from the gates and auto, and we are at 2.8 million. And it's a very good number, and we hope to reach the budget by the end of the season. Thank you.
Good morning. I do feel like we could cue up that Kool and the Gang music now, because programming, we are dedicated to celebrating all this season with a variety of programs. The planning for the sesquicentennial season began about 18 months ago, and it began with community. It was the vision and the leadership of Cindy Grimm and Randy Snow, who interacted with a diverse group of people who brought together ideas for all four pillars. So these became our drivers in terms of looking at our strategic initiatives of why are we doing what we're doing and what makes a Chautauqua season a Chautauqua season. So you can go ahead to the next slide there, Charles. Right now, as we've entered in the season, here's a couple of quick numbers we're looking at. About 3,000 total experiences during the 2024 season. And those, of course, are a part of all four pillars. Each week, our team, we've been looking at our engagement numbers for programming, and we're tracking about 10,000 people per week engaging in programming. Now, those are not unique registrants, right? One person may go to 3 to 5 programs per day, but you can see the engagement numbers that are happening. In addition to our commitment to four-pillar programming, which I'm going to talk about, this season has also been a season of adding a variety of special initiatives and events to complement and celebrate the sesquicentennial. In fact, Charles asked me, when is the event to celebrate the 150th? I said, no, there is all of these events they're doing it. So we kicked off with an official Founders Day celebration, opening weekend. We had a variety of activities last weekend. Tomorrow, we hope you'll join us for the first Decades Dance, which will highlight the 50s and 60s. Let's keep our fingers crossed for great weather. We got some classic cars and dancing down. So we want to celebrate all the periods that Lakeside has been here. I've seen many people enjoying the mural projects and the initiatives of public art. Those are all part of the sesquicentennial season. The time capsule projects, the historical time panels that Linda Huber and others worked so hard on, these are all part of these. So we hope you're exploring and enjoying this idea of building community, exploring these 7 community practices, not just with the 4-pillar programming, but because of a variety of other initiatives. Charles, if you can cue the next slide. Our commitment to the 4-pillar programming, some of those things that we've always done, Preachers of the Week. But this year you've also seen and hopefully are experiencing some special moments. Coming up on Sunday, July 23rd, we will have the historic camp meeting, just like happened 150 years ago, with maybe a few more amenities, but down here at the lakefront on a Sunday evening at 7:30 p.m. to really celebrate that history of the camp meeting here at Lakeside. We have an ordination celebration coming up in August, and Charlie Yost has reached out through the conferences and other mechanisms to connect with all of those who went through ordination here at Lakeside and bring them back for a special celebration. Last weekend, there was a rededication of Bradley Temple. You've maybe gotten to see Once Upon a Porch in that beautiful set that's also going to be the future of taking Lakeside God Squad program out into the community in new and innovative ways, including online next winter. We've also seen some real exciting growth with our middle grade madness under the leadership of John and Bonnie Wilkie, and that has included these programs called MGM Extend, where they're connecting both with the families then and community and doing some special field trips. And Brett Johnson has taken the teen leadership group in the underground, and we have 12 teens who committed to being our teen leaders this year, also as ambassadors, and giving us that next voice of Lakeside. So lots of exciting things going on. Education has seen the most significant growth this summer, and part of that is also the connection with other pillars, our arts and entertainment, religious life, and even recreation and wellness, in order to elevate our focus on education. And so one of the things we hope you've been enjoying are weekly keynote programs in Hoover. Dr. Catherine Sullivan, first woman to walk in space, been to the trench, joined us this week. And we're wrapping around value-added experiences. Those might include a luncheon, a book signing, a workshop, and so all of those. I want to say to this community, the reason we were able to get a lot of these is because of our community connections. And I would say at least 4 of them up there said, I want to come to Lakeside because I'm connected to somebody here and I'm going to waive my fee, right? So yes, give yourselves a round of applause. This is about community impact and connection. So please keep that in mind as you're thinking about next year, right? Those connections do matter. We are also live streaming 6 of those this summer, continuing with our pilot for Lakeside Online. We are recording those, and we're also reaching back out to these keynotes, asking them for further use of those for next winter. So when we're not able to be here in person, we can still connect online. Arts and entertainment, this summer we will experience over 100 live music experiences, and I hope to see every one of you tonight for Blood, Sweat, and Tears at 7:30 p.m. I think one of the things that's been really exciting and also challenging in Chautauqua is the diversity of artists. You hear, I love that artist, I didn't like that artist. I love all of those comments and I value them, but they are part of the Chautauqua. We don't give you the Journey cover band every night for a reason. So keep those feedback coming. Recreation and wellness, our commitment to all of our facilities and engagement, plus some new programs. Last weekend, maybe you got to enjoy playing against a Grandmaster checker tournament winner, and that's our commitment to also celebrating the rich history of checkers here at Lakeside. So really looking at that past, but celebrating our future. And then finally, our commitment doesn't end just with the season, but again, as we look to the community, as we look to homeowners, we look to the strategic plan, our commitment is to use those shoulder seasons. We'll be going through mid-October, including 2 additional Hoover shows. We have a wonderful Christmas weekend planned, including the official tree lighting. In the spring, we've already got the dates and people committing to come here for the solar eclipse in April, and then the biggest week of birding will return. And additionally, we will go ahead and cue that next slide. We'll continue with the Lakeside Online, which really connects the community in meaningful ways, and that will kick off in December with an Advent study and then end in April or so next year. So thank you for your continued vision and support. Please reach out to me. We appreciate your comments and your feedback as we start to jump into next season's planning.
Okay, thank you for that. Hopefully that's helpful for everybody here. I know that you hear folks want better communication, they want more communication. So one of the ways to do that, a lot of what you just saw is very similar to what these folks present to the board. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I'd love to hear your comments. That type of information. Do you like to see that? Is there other things you'd like to see? Feel free to give myself or other members of the executive committee feedback on that type of information. Quick thing, and then I'll do a question here in just a moment. So next steps, so we can do some Q&A if you have some left over from before. I do want to get to streets and drainage. Dave Blank is down here. He's been anticipating getting up here. Now I know it's raining, so if you want to stay, it's a great. But we'll go over that. As if you missed it at the beginning, that is the same presentation that was given last week at the community forum. So if you want to see it again, great. If you don't and you'd like to get out and enjoy the day, that's fine as well. We just wanted to make sure that everybody saw it.
And it may be a good time to see if you have any drainage issues if you go home now while it's raining.
Right.
Just,
Today's a good day to report drainage. So we'll do a couple Q&As, and then I'm going to let Dave come up here and talk about streets and drainage And then Todd Fowler is here as well from the board and also in the finance committee. So we've got a question back here in the back.
Is it on? We've been coming here 60 years. And one of the great things for my 13 grandchildren is this theater. It hasn't been functioning for years. I understand there's a bid that's been put out somewhere between 70 and 90,000 to completely change the presentation of movies. My grandkids are wondering what's going on. We just heard there are millions of dollars being raised. Great, but we need to execute what is a key factor. And think about this. This is the first year we've charged for kids that can't come to a movie. Could somebody explain that to me, please?
Yes. We have been showing movies. We haven't stopped showing movies. We do have the bid. We had a priority list on our capital expenditures and things that we had to get done. With the feedback from the community and from the coffee chats, we have moved the projector in this theater up on that list as a fundraiser to get it done. It is at the top of our list, sir. And so we are working very hard to ensure that we have a very functioning theater to run first-run movies. We understand that this is what our matrix on priorities sometimes has a ROA attached to it. We understand that this ROA is not a bottom line function, but it is a heartfelt function for our kids and for our kids to come to. And so that is one of the main reasons that we did move it up on the list. We are refreshing that bid because that bid is 2 years old now. And so we are refreshing that bid, and we'll give you more feedback about it as the summer progresses.
You also missed the fact this is the revenue generator when the movie's working. If you're talking about $68,000 to $90,000, you lost the revenue stream to pay for it.
Well, we do not charge for the movies we run here during the season because people have paid for us. Now, some of the movies are, but Jeannie can give you more feedback on some of those movies we've been asking for donations. The Monday movies, how often?
Yeah, we are currently showing movies each Monday evening at 7:30 p.m. Those are our classic movies, but they could be something that just recently came out maybe in the spring, or we just showed Super Mario Brothers, which was a release earlier this year, but there's a slight delay on that. But we are regularly showing movies. This coming Monday night, actually the 10th, we're actually going to be in Hoover Auditorium with one of the silent movies, thanks to the support of Debbie and Peter Stevens, and that will be a wonderful family event, including live music by Mr. Clark Wilson on the organ, so if you haven't experienced that. But we have heard your feedback about the movies here at Orchestra Hall. We are looking to optimize those experiences and think about what will work both logistically based on our other educational programs we run in the space, as well as obviously the technology we have to use and where the improvements.
Thanks so much. My question's for Gretchen. I have two questions. It was great to hear about all the money that was raised. You said there were $3.5 million raised last year, a record. Great news to hear about that. About $1 million for the Impact Fund, $200,000 for the endowment. Where's the other 2.3 come in? And can you just fill us in on that, the remainder? That's my first question. Then a second question about the endowment.
It is spread across, so for instance, special projects like Once Upon a Porch are also gifts given. So there were lots of gifts that came in for Once Upon a Porch from the Grinley family, as well as others in that were tribute or memorial gifts. We're going to dive into that in detail at the August 5th, and we'll provide a breakdown of where all of the generosity has specifically impacted Lakeside like broken down from endowment to restricted giving to the Impact Fund.
Great, thanks so much. Then the question about the endowment. It looks like there's about $9 million in the endowment, just top level. how much of that comes out of the endowment on an annual basis? You don't have to go into percentages for all the different functions, but 9 million in, how much annually comes out?
The endowment is supporting the operations at roughly about 300 to 400,000. We base that on a 4-quarter trailing average, and so we're drawing 4% off of the endowment today. The Lakeside Chautauqua Foundation Board manages the endowment and also works directly with Key Bank, who is holding our endowment. And so they work together with the investments on that. And so we have a specific investment committee as well that works directly with our portfolio manager.
That one's not on. Your mic is not yet on. Let's see.
Hello? Hey, there we go. Quick point of clarification. I remember as a kid coming here and paying like $3 a ticket for movies, so there's that. And also it's because it's the only place that had air conditioning that I recall as a kid too, so it's kind of a double whammy. The question I had though is just related to gate fees. What is the process for setting gate passes, both daily, sort of seasonal surge pricing, et cetera, for 2024, and what degree of community participation is there in that process?
Yeah, I can give maybe a little bit of previews as I sit on the finance committee, and Sam's back here, and there's some other folks. So as Sam had mentioned, the budget process for 2024 is going to start soon. And the way that process typically works is they look at what next year is going to look like, you know, from an expense standpoint, both from entertainment and then operations and everything else that is going to happen. And then based on that, they'll take a look at, you know, what kind of revenue is needed and where that revenue can come from, both from gate fees, rentals, and all of that. And so typically the gate fees are structured in a way to make sure that we're generating revenue to cover the expenses for next year. So I sit on the finance committee, also on the board we talked about earlier, Elizabeth Irwin, who's the LPOA rep as well. So if you have specific feedback you'd like to give, feel free to reach out to me, other members of the executive committee. Happy to do that. But the board, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the board process, the approval for the budget is at the February meeting. Yes, that's I'm getting head shakes. So the board approves the 2024 budget, which includes gate fees typically at the February board meeting. So we got a goal to get that done by November this year. So we're trying to get that done a little bit faster to let the community know. But that typically is the process for setting gate fees. Right.
Can't hear you.
Here, I can. So the Lakeside management team will create the budget and then reviews with the finance committee, and then it goes to the board for approval. So just in terms of steps of that. So Charles, Sam, rest of the team will create that budget, work with the finance committee, and then goes to the board for approval. So based on the current comment, we're trying to have that ready to go in November. So does that answer your question, sir?
Yes. My request would be to make them lower.
Understand.
He said make them lower.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, ma'am.
Char Wilkerson, 444 Sycamore. We all know we have many talented people in Lakeside. And last year at an LPOA meeting, we started a catalog of expertise among the Lakesiders. People who volunteered last year to be on that list have served on the roads task force. They've helped with the cabins and the Wahomis facelift, and they've also given opinions and advice on issues and ideas for the buildings in Lakeside. Being on the list does not commit you to anything. It just says, here is my area of expertise, and if you need help in this area, you can reach out to me, and I may be able to help you in some way. Currently, we are looking into redesigning some of the restrooms in Wahomis. And we have a roofing issue in that building as well. So if either of these projects fit with your skill set, we would appreciate hearing from you. However, our needs are not limited to these two projects. So if you are interested in being on the catalog of expertise list in any way, please contact me, Shar Wilkerson, 444 Sycamore. Thank you.
That is good. We've got another question here, but yeah, Lakeside runs through a lot of ways, through the staff, the great staff. We've had a lot of volunteers, and then just a lot of community members helping out. So I'll make sure to include your info on the email that goes out afterwards. I've got a question right here.
I'm Tom Rust. I live on Cedar. I'm right across the street from Jeff and 2 houses from Jane. So I feel blessed to have such hardworking people surrounding me like they do. My question is to the entertainment person. I've always wondered, what does an act like Blood, Sweat, and Tears cost? Is it like $10,000, $5,000, and whatever? And also, would it be possible to put out a list of possible entertainers for next year and get like a vote feedback, not a hard vote, but just some feedback on, hey, I'd really like to see that group come here, or I'm tired of Peter Noonan coming, 5 years in a row, or whatever it might be?
Those are both great questions. One is I do not have the fee right in my mind of what Blood, Sweat, and Tears costs tonight. So I'm not going to take a guess. I do definitely know it's more than $5,000 or $10,000, so I can guarantee you that. I will also tell you that we have seen entertainment fees go up significantly after the pandemic. And a lot of entertainers are choosing, saying like, you know what, I didn't really need to do that, or I can do it differently, right? In terms of adding a list or getting a list out, it's actually quite a complicated puzzle, right? Because we're looking at both working with a variety of agents, timing, who's on tour when, plus all of the technical requirements by any band coming into Lakeside. You are always, always welcome to give us information. You have bands, connections, thoughts. Please do that. I have a running list. I call it our dashboard by pillar. We share that with all of our program team. We also, of course, this last year had the Sesquicentennial Committee and a specific programming committee of 4 people who work side by side with me and our pillar directors to bring that together. So I would say if you're interested in that, let's have some coffee, sit down, and talk about the process so I can spend more time on that. Happy to rethink it, but what happens is we'll get to the end of the season about September. I'm keeping a list right now looking at what worked, what didn't work, who was engaged by that, what are the fees associated with. And then we're going to get to in the September, and by November, we're going to actually have to have the commitments and contracts in hand so that we can get the information to our marketing team to start rolling that season out in January. So there's about a lot of moving parts when you think about those 100 performances, the various venues we have, and then of course it comes down to the financials of making it work and really meet the needs of the entire community, which of course is diverse ages, tastes, and interests. So thank you for the question.
Tom, what band did you want? I know you had one in mind. I mean, I want Journey, but they're not coming. I mean, yeah, Bruce Springsteen, whatever.
I will say you too. I did ask what would Bono be to come here for a 1-hour keynote. $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one's out. That one's out. That one's out. Okay, we got a question in the back right here.
I'd like to just add that we live in a community in the off season where some of the same acts appear as here, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears would be about $120 a ticket to get in.
Yeah, it is expensive. There was an article recently in one of the major newspapers just in terms of the costs for bands, and you have folks like Bono, and they're generating millions of dollars for engagements. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, do we have any other questions, or do we want to go? Okay, we got another question right here in the middle.
Just real quick, I always send my suggestions to Shirley. Is that still a good thing to do? Yes. Okay.
Okay. Band suggestions to Shirley. Not just bands. Oh, any suggestion? Yeah, entertainment. Do we have another question? Right here.
Polly Miller, 619 Elm. Across the street from us has now become -1 home, complete rental row. I know Lakeside wanted that, and I understand what's going on. There's a negative to it, and I don't know how to solve it. I tried to solve it last year by contacting the owner, who no one had met, lived in Columbus, and just said, call the realtor, I have nothing to do with it other than I own it, and collect the money. Well, the rest of us are suffering, and I'll tell you how. This particular home, and I'm just giving an example, had 6 vehicles, 2 big SUVs on the street, 2 golf carts, and the remaining grass was filled, I mean literally filled with bicycles. They were oblivious to the rest of us who had our cars in our driveway, which was required when we built. We were to have 2 off-street parking places, which didn't happen. Whole nother situation. Anyway, I'm willing to do something about it. I don't know what to do. Our garbage will not be picked up. We pay for that, and we all know we pay quite a bit for that. But we saw that it was picked up to that home and not beyond. And so we questioned the man. He wasn't really kind. He just said, I can't get there. And if I can't get there, your garbage and recycling will not be picked up. Now let's think a minute. The size of the garbage and the recycling truck versus the size of the EMS and a fire truck, which did appear later in the season and took up the entire road. That's a concern. We don't know when we're going to need EMS. We do know when we'd like our garbage picked up. I don't know what to do. I'm very open to helping with the situation. These are VRBOs, Airbnbs. That's another issue. I don't know that Lakeside gets any cut from that as they do from the 2 realtors that are in town. But what can we do for those of us who, I'm here 6 months. I use the service. I depend upon the service. I pay for the service. The service is not going to be available if we do not do something with the vehicles that are on street. We looked up one VRBO, and the owner said 2 off street, 3 on the street. No. And some of these people are renting to 18 people. I get it. These structures are huge, but we don't have the car space. What can we do? What does Lakeside want us to do? I don't want to be the you-know-what of the block, but I would like my garbage picked up, and I would like to know that an EMS vehicle can reach my house if need be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anybody having issues with your rentals, make sure you reach out to Charles. We do, I serve on the municipal committee, which has a lot of responsibilities around the grounds, but one of those is signing parking spots, making sure that people just aren't hanging out on the street. And so if you have an issue, when you see that happen the next time, make sure you reach out to Charles in his office, because they have the ability to send someone over to say, you can't park here, you can't be there. There's probably some things we can do as well to reach out to owners and make sure they're communicating better on that. But if that's happening, if it's happening today when you go back, let his office know so they can go address it right away. Yeah, that should not be happening. There's not enough parking here, and it's already tight. So, but thank you for that comment. Did you have a question, ma'am? Right there, right in the middle.
Kathy Holland on Maple. I have Polly's same concern, because I don't have that many cars, that many rentals, but the street parking, we almost get hit when we try to back out on our golf cart, because you can't see cars coming down Maple. But so is there any committee we could have for long term? I'm willing to help Polly with that too, to look into this and help Charles. Poor Charles is, his back is going to be last, but all the people complaining to him. Is there any way to set up something with all this help like Charles talking about to help the executive board with this situation?
Well, the lakeside grounds are really mapped out in terms of parking spots and spaces, and that's there today. So there's already a good structure in terms of what works and what doesn't work. He just needs to know. So once he knows where the issue is, he can go out. It's already mapped out, knows where people are allowed to park and not. Now, if it's mapped out wrong and there's people parking in spots that are allowed but it's not working for your driveways, then that's a different issue. We should talk about that as well. But it sounds like with this is just too many cars in an area they shouldn't be. His office and his staff can address that. So, they can certainly ask him to move. So they can ask him to move. They can communicate with the owner. Yeah, they have the ability. Lakeside does own the ground, so they have the ability to have those discussions with property owners. Yeah, let's reach out to Charles' office and let's have a discussion and see what can be done there, and and
But
if
when
they
they
can reach out
post
to the owner.
online that there are 3 on-street parking places, no.
Okay.
No. So if they could just post their rules inside their cottage, I doubt they do that. That would be a huge help. But Charles, I'll work with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, any additional questions? If not, you all have been great today with Q&A, and I'm sure there are going to be some streets questions as well. But thanks for your attention. Thanks for all the good questions today. You can ask questions afterwards. If you want to see streets and drainage, don't upset Dave by leaving now. But I'm going to invite him up, and we're going to do a streets and drainage discussion with Q&A. Yeah, thank you for coming. Have a great weekend. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I know. Good to see you. Dave, good to see you. You want to hold this? Or you want it up here?
I'd rather be there, but probably won't. All right, good.
You can do that. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. You're going to be with me. We had a hard stop at noon, right? Yes. Yeah, we're done.
Leave your information at Gretchen, and we'll get you on the health board and Gretchen,
Power washed yesterday, and so my arms are.
Oh, gee.
Feeling more than I thought I would. So. I do not know how to shorten this particularly. I'm going to ask you to do a couple of slides individually. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So, is there a clicker? You have the clicker.
Yeah, it's working.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm going to move.
All right.
Sit down.
Good for you. Hope you feel better. Why don't we go ahead and just start? Just say yes, let's say time. We'd like to get started if we could do that. Well, thank you all for staying. I'm Dave Blank. With me is Todd Fowler. Todd is the chair of the Finance Committee of the board, and I am an advisory member of the Finance Committee. He has a vote. I don't have a vote. So complaints, go to him, all right? But Dave has influence, so it works both ways.
So I just wanted to start with when I've been faced in the past with situations where a group needs to pay for something which benefits the entire group, I'm reminded of the old saw attributed to Louisiana Senator Russell Long. Don't tax you, don't tax me, tax the man behind the tree. Well, so as we think about how to fund this particular project, I think it's important that we not only consider you and me, but also the man and woman behind the tree. We're all Lakesiders. We all need to participate in this, and we're trying to make it as fair as we can do that. We are seeking comments from people on options. We don't have all the answers. We've put together a couple of financial models on how we think this could work effectively, but we're looking for how you think this works for you and the people around you. I'd also like to second, because of the rain, we need your comments on drainage. The drainage link was put up there. Jeff's going to send it out again. Particularly if you have photographs of the lake in front of your cottage, please send copies of that, with a little bit of description to that particular website. It's only by having that information can we learn about your concerns. So what are we trying to do today? Several things, just a little bit of calendar. Let's review what we've talked about in terms of what we think this is going to cost us. We'll get into the funding options, and then we have a couple of other ideas. This slide is intended to show the schedule we're working on at this point in time. We're in July right now, the LPOA meeting. We had the community forum last week. There's still opportunities to ask the management about things in the various forums that Charles is sponsoring, and is when you go buy coffee for Charles or whatever you do. I haven't been to one of those yet, so maybe I should do that. I need my coffee. Hopefully, we hear your comments at this time period. We'll take comments as long as we can until the decisions are made. I'm hopeful that the board will act on the first year budget ideas on this at its August meeting. We'll get into the whole budgeting process as we talked about, and we hope to start construction in September. Up to now, and by the way, I see some people taking photographs of slides. You're certainly welcome to do that. I think Jeff is planning to send these slides out to the membership. Thank you. The current estimate for this cost is $4 million. One thing we do know is it will not cost $4 million. We don't know if it's going to be lower or higher. That number is based upon the best estimate that our engineers have been able to come up with. We have added significant amount of contingency to that in the neighborhood of 30%, and it's based upon what we know now as we have had significant evaluation of the streets done at this point. One of our concerns is scope creep. While you're doing this, can't you do that type of thing? Scope creep will only add to the cost, so we have to be careful about that. But yet we know at least now that cost does not include any changes in signage. And as we look around, we need changes in signage, and we probably need to deal with that. We don't know what the number is at this point. So I'm sure there'll be other things like that which will begin to eat away at the contingency. We're not planning to use up the contingency. We hope that it isn't spent very much at all, but if we need to, we will. That's the idea. We're engaging the firm of CDE Incorporated out of, I think it's Norwalk. We're ready to sign a contract with them for engineering, and that work is expected to happen earlier, or probably later this year. They will probably have people on the grounds right after Labor Day. If not before, Charles and I talked about getting letters sent out to community members to say, when these guys and women are prowling around your property, if the CDE people are supposed to be there. Construction presumably will start in the fall of next year. The plan is to start on the east side and to work to the west. options. We start with the lease. The lease talks about we can recover through assessments up to a level the costs associated with street improvements and sanitary. So the fallback is the assessment. But we want to start with what else can we, what are the other sources of revenue that we can deal with? The first question we should be asked, and we are asking, is how much are we already collecting in the current assessment which can be applied to this particular road project? The numbers which we've put together at this point are based upon $100,000 per year would go to this project for a 5-year period of time for $500,000. Now, we don't know that number with firmness at all. Charles has already promised that at the August 5th meeting, we're going to have a complete accounting of the recent assessment, and I'm working with him on that. So we will be, and with Samuel on that. So we will know much more, I hope, in a few weeks on what that number looks like. And then on the assessment on an ongoing basis, we're planning to have a much more open, transparent report on what goes on with the assessment on a regular basis. Then we look at other sources not related to property owners per se, but rather people who use roads. And this slide has a number of the ideas we're talking about for the daily use charges. And Todd, perhaps you can speak to some of these.
Thanks, Dave. I told Dave I was power washing yesterday, and so my arms are tired, so I might try and have something else hold this for me. So a couple of things that I want everybody to keep in mind as you're looking at these slides. You know, all of the numbers that we're presenting to you today, as Dave mentioned, are simply estimates. These are things that we're thinking about. These are things that are subject to change. So, and the other piece I want you all to keep in mind is I'm here to listen, Jane's here to listen, Jeff's here to listen. As Dave mentioned, we probably haven't thought through all of the different angles related to how we can think about this project. So as you guys think about what we're saying, please reach out to us and let us know any thoughts that you might have. What this slide is really showing, as Dave mentioned, is this is the man behind the tree. So we realize that a lot of things come down to the property owners. This is an investment, though, that we're making into the future of Lakeside. The big thing that we want to think about, though, is what's the equitable way to do it. We realize that property owners can't bear the entire burden of this, nor should they. And so what we've tasked the management team with is ways to think about additional funding sources for this project. And so again, right now, the number that we're at is about $150,000 per year that Charles has signed up for, that he said that that's something that he feels that the team can come up with. The different ways that we've looked at this, and they're listed up here, but we've got auto passes, and really think about these as somewhat like use charges. And what we're thinking about with auto passes is not double dipping or double counting. So if you're a property owner and you have a season auto pass, there wouldn't be an incremental fee for that auto pass. We're really trying to think about the person who's coming into Lakeside using the roads and assigning a fee that way. The other things as we think about construction projects and the impact that that can take on our roads when we have the heavy duty equipment that's coming through. For a homeowner that's doing a large renovation, is there a way that we can assess a fee related to that project that would help recoup some of this? And then the other piece would be some of the other things that are up here. Is it hotel fees? Is it special assessments or special fees that are included on the daily passes? But again, the thought process here is to look at some different revenue sources outside of just the assessment.
I didn't power wash yesterday. If you have suggestions about other sources of revenue, we're all ears. Please let us know. We're trying to listen. The last item on this list is another source which we can potentially use to fund this project, and that is borrowing. We can use our lines of credit. We can come up with a dedicated bank loan. We have good credit, and these things are available to us. The question is, or the issue is, they cost money in terms of interest, and by using our credit for this, we don't have it available for something else. So the question becomes, is it worth it to get a lower annual fee in order by borrowing money and paying interest associated with that and using up that capacity? So just as an example, what we're looking at here, the estimated investment is about $4 million. If we collect $100,000 a year from the existing assessment to produce $500,000, we collect $150,000 a year for 5 years to produce $750,000. There's another $2.75 million, which is necessary to pay for the rest of the road project. So how do we do that? So we've looked at the assessment would be the source for that particular amount. We've looked at a number of ideas, 4 different ideas. There are many, many more ideas and variations on all of these, but we've looked at 4. But I want to start with the blue box. We think it's important to begin the assessment increase this fall so that we can begin to build the construction fund and minimize borrowing into the future, minimize use of lines of credit, have something with which we can pay the contractors when we go to work in the fall. That would also have the advantage of spreading out the cost over one more year over what we would think over the construction period or a longer period of time. So 4 ideas, 2 of which we call pay-as-you-go and pay-as-you-go an extended idea. The pay-as-you-go idea is the fastest we can probably build this project is about 4 seasons, starting in '24. We would build for a month and a half or 2 each fall, and we would be collecting revenues through the assessments for a 4-year period of time, plus the year in advance, so over a 5-year period of time. So you've got to say, or I've got to say, you've got to be able to do better than that. So we think about, we don't have to build it over 4 years. We can stretch that out. We can make it over 6 years, for example. I don't think we want to go much longer than 6 years, but potentially we could. You don't want to have construction forever. You don't want to have all the risks associated with the future years. We got enough risks already in a 4-year period of time. But we could lower the annual charges by spreading this out over 6 years, paying it over 6 years plus the year in advance. So that's the second model we've looked at. A third model is to have a dedicated bank facility for this, pay it back over, for example, 10 years. We wouldn't borrow $2.7 million at the beginning. We'd borrow as we needed. We'd have some sort of a flexible borrowing ability with that. That's a standard process. It's not case of first impression. But we could allow us to stretch out the payments longer, but it has an interest charge associated with it. We've calculated that at about 7%, I believe, for a 10-year loan. A fourth option, which is kind of a hybrid option, is let's build over 4 years, but we fund it over a 6-year period of time with assessments, or with the upfront year, every 7 years. What that would do, it would reduce the total amount of borrowing. We'd be borrowing about $1.25 million at its peak in option 4, compared to about $2.5 million in option 3. And it results in a slightly lower assessment, but there's still interest associated with it, nowhere close to as much interest in that account as there was in the third option. So here are some numbers. The 2 pay-as-you-go options are on the left. 4 years of construction, 5 years of payment, including the upfront year. The total new assessment per parcel is just about $2,900. An annual amount over a 5-year period of time is under $600, and that's about a 32% increase over the current assessment. The second one, which I don't want to insult you by reading, but 6 years of construction, 7 years of payment, gets you to about $2,500. Why is that? Because you have a couple more years of non-assessment revenues. Now, of course, in the first one, we could have a couple more years of non-assessment revenues as well. So that's sort of an illusion of a difference, because we could do that in the 4-year too. But we would end up with payments of about $350 a year, which is a 20% increase. Both of these pay-as-you-go functions would have short amounts of borrowing with the lines of credit, just to even out the receipts and expenditures, but they'd be short, and we're not counting any interest that we might get on the first year's worth of revenue also, which would offset some of that. So that's more detailed estimation than we've done at this point. Long-term debt. A 4-season construction, 11 years of repayment, including the first year of the accelerated increase. $3,400 of per parcel. Why is that? That's the interest you're seeing on the borrowing. And we end up with a little over $300 a year as the assessment, and it's about a 17% increase. The last one, which is kind of a hybrid between the 4-year payment or 4-year construction but a 7-year repayment process. You borrow some, it's a lesser amount. The number's way down because you're not paying quite so much on the interest. You have about a 21% increase, pardon my voice. So that's the summary. Now, I must hasten to say, I have that asterisk on the word average. Nobody's going to pay the average at this point in time. We haven't figured out precisely how that's going to work yet, but right now, although the average assessment is about not quite $1,800, very few people pay just that precise number. You pay more or less than that based upon the value of your property in comparison to the average property in Lakeside.
Dave, if I could.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things to think about going back to the slide. So I'd say that the main thing to keep in mind is the initial investment that we're talking about, that $4 million, that's the same in all of these examples. So the cost of the project doesn't change. What changes as you move into a 6-year project, a 10-year project, or some sort of hybrid of that, is there's incremental inflation that we're considering as you go to 6 years versus 4 years. So there's some additional cost that goes on that $4 million that's not contemplated in the first amount. And the second piece, as Dave mentioned, is there's interest expense if we choose to use a line of credit. So really, the cost of the project doesn't change. If you look at, the incremental assessment, it's just a matter of, are we doing it over a shorter period? And are we not using interest? Are we not factoring in additional inflation? Or are we doing it over a longer period where we have some additional costs? So I just want to keep in mind that even though the numbers might be a 17% increase, the total cost is higher over the life of that project because we're extending it, because we have interest, and because we have inflation. A lot of numbers here. Dave and I, as well as Charles and Sam and the team, are very happy to walk through this in detail. We're going to share this with everybody, but just some things to keep in mind there.
Just a slide on the average once again. Most, over 3/4 of the parcels in Lakeside, and there are 960 some of them, are have an assessment between about $1,000 and $2,700. So you're somewhere in the midst of that, most likely. Some are even lower and some are even higher. But again, that's based upon your valuation in comparison to the average valuation in Lakeside. And how these numbers affect you will be dependent upon your valuation, and it's the county's valuation. We have nothing to do with valuing things, or else mine would be on the lower end of things, but no, but they're not. So just be aware of that. Somebody comes back and say, you said it was going to be $579 and mine is $579 or $589. Well, that could well be the case because of the valuation of your particular parcel. All right, this is Todd's famous slide, which I love, by the way.
Dave's being generous. These are a collaboration, and for those of you who haven't thanked the Streets and Drainage Task Force, I just have to say, from a board perspective, and this gets into Char's comments, I mean, the knowledge base in the community is fantastic, and we would not be in this position without some great work within the community. So I'd love to take credit for some of this, but none of this is my slide or Dave's slide. This is a lot of hard work from everybody in the room and some great feedback. I think we've covered in general a lot of this, but really what we're trying to say is there's pros and cons to all of the different approaches. And we also realize that people are in different situations, and we realize that people have different financial constraints or different financial abilities. What we're trying to think about is what's best for the broader community, what makes the project go the smoothest, what do we want to see from streets being torn up for 5 years or 6 years or 4 years, or that piece of it, some of the unknowns. I'd say the big focus here is if we do the first option, which is the shorter term pay-as-you-go, 4-year construction, 5-year increase to the assessment, it reduces a lot of the unknowns. We have more visibility into what the costs are going to be. We know that there's going to be variability. We know that there's going to be adjustments that we have to make, but we're doing it over a shorter period of time. So we reduce some of the risks about inflation, what happens as costs move, prices of oil, asphalt, all of those different factors. The second option, which is the extended, it's a 6-year increase into the assessment, and it's a longer construction period. Basically, the benefit that we get there is the annual assessment increase, as we showed on the prior slide, or 2 slides ago, comes down a bit, but we've got another year or 2 of inflation in the numbers that we have to consider that the total cost was probably going to move up just because we're doing it over a longer period. And then the second piece is that we've got streets that are torn up for a couple-year period longer, and we get into more of the unknowns associated with a longer construction project. I said that I was here to listen, and when Sam was giving his financial report and said that there's no borrowings on the line of credit and there was applause, to me that resonated. And I don't want to skip any of the other 2 options because these are certainly things that we're considering. But I think one of the things that we've thought about is what is the best use of Lakeside's borrowing ability? And how do we factor that into this sort of project, other bigger projects that we may want to do, and how much do we want to use our quote-unquote balance sheet to fund different projects? And ultimately, our sense is, and I think Cindy Mall's in the room, when she headed the finance committee for the past several years, and I had the fortune to serve with her, there was a big effort to move away from using debt if we didn't have to at Lakeside. And so we wanted to be open. We wanted to think about the different options that are out there. We certainly realize that this is an option, but as Dave mentioned, this is essentially the incremental cost that comes from using debt. Yes, our annual assessment increase, and I say us because I am a property owner, does come down, but there's incremental interest expense associated with that. So essentially, if it's Huntington Bank, if it's Marblehead, if it's one of the other financial institutions, they're accruing some of the benefit from doing that. So you can kind of see, on the Hollywood Squares, we get into the investment cost, the duration, the period of the investment, and those sorts of things. And in no way are we trying to, predetermine or preordain any of the options. It's just to show some of the different things that we've thought about and we've considered. And again, really the point here today is for you to understand these, to think about them, talk to your neighbors, and then reach out to Dave and me about it.
I'm happy to take your comments, and I'll respond back to you if you do.
You want to?
As we said, we will have an annual review of the assessment accounting so we get better transparency on that matter than we've had in a while. We are considering building a streets reserve at the end of paying for this process. And how would that work? If we increase the assessment now to pay for that process, once it's paid for, we can decrease the assessment, but we don't have to bring it all the way back to where it had been. We could continue to have some charges to build a reserve, which would be segregated from the rest of the funds, earn money, and be used for future streets projects. For example, every several years, you really need to seal these streets. And if we begin to build funds for that we can do it through that type of a reserve. And after a period of time, many of us may not be here anymore when it's time to do that, but Todd probably will be. We will have to replace the streets again, replace the pavement again. We don't want to go through this mess again if we can avoid it. So we're considering that.
And Dave, it's just the assessment too. Some of the other non-assessment fees might not go up.
Right, yeah, it could well be the road use charges. If we see those as a valuable source of revenue, we just could potentially continue those at some level. I don't know what level. We don't have details on this. These are your thoughts that we have at this point. We know from from anecdotal remarks that some of you have made to us, and from our experience with the pool, that a number of people might prefer to make an upfront payment rather than have this on their annual assessment process. We're trying to figure out how to do that effectively so we don't add excessive burden to the finance staff. We give due credit to having the money earlier was valuable to Lakeside and should get some value to the payer. And in addition to that, we have to think about a true-up mechanism. When this number is not $4 million, how do we deal with the overage or the underage? So that's another idea we're thinking about. If you're interested in that, we'd love to hear your ideas about that as well. And the community feedback, which we've talked about. So here it is. Here's the assignment. You didn't think you were going to get away from this scot-free, right? We want you to reflect on this and consider this and how it impacts you and how you think it impacts Lakeside. Please discuss it with your neighbors and friends. Please discuss it with board members or with me or anybody else you want to discuss it with. Importantly, we want you to provide feedback. We hope you can get it by July 22nd to this website, theboard@lakesideohio.com. We were asked last week whether we will make the comments available. The answer is yes, we plan to make the comments available. So if they're clarifying questions today, we'd love to deal with those right now. If there are questions about this is better versus that, I really want you to think about it right now rather than having a big discussion about it in the room. We can answer some of it, but we don't have answers yet. We're looking for answers. We're looking for your feedback. Yes, sir. Yes, please.
And again, the last thing I'd ask everybody to keep in mind is we're making estimates right now. As the project begins, we're going to get new information. Things will change. And one of the ways some of these options are designed is that we can have some flexibility. So on an annual basis, as we get more information about costs, as we get different information about property values, all of those things will affect what the assessment, what the non-assessment revenue can be from year to year. So again, don't get locked into the numbers that Dave and I have shared with you today. I think the thing that we're the most confident in this presentation is that those aren't going to be the numbers. It's going to be something different at some point. So
are those slides online? Not yet, but they will be.
They're going to be made available, yes.
Jeff's going to arrange to put them out through the Lpoa website material.
Yes, I will send that out with my email after this, so you get that. We got a question in the back, and then we'll go here.
Josh, 344 Laurel. First of all, incredible project, big scope, lots of moving parts, so appreciate the work you're doing. One comment and then two questions. First, I think as you're looking at any fees you put on contractors or construction companies, those just fall back on the property owners, really. So it's actually another assessment, just to note. First question, the two questions about funding options, and maybe these have been discussed and I haven't read or heard about them. First question is it possible for some of the annual surplus, which we heard about earlier, $1 million annual surplus, our cash reserve is now over $2 million. Is it possible, first question, to use part of the surplus over the course of the 4 or 5 years? If we used $500,000 over the course of 4 years, that's $2 million out of the 2.75. First question.
Yeah, so the short answer is what we're looking at is the incremental investment related to this project. What happens from a budgeting standpoint, there were some great questions about this earlier, is the budget is designed to be balanced at the end of every year. And so when we do run into surplus situations, the management team does a good job in controlling costs and those sorts of things. Then there's a thought about, how are those dollars spent for the ongoing operations of Lakeside? So for example, the conversation around facilities and maintenance and those pieces. So the first thought is we're not looking at that, number one, as being a permanent, that every year we're going to generate that $1 million surplus. Number two, a lot of that operating cash flow is reserved for other projects right now in Lakeside.
Second funding possibility, are bonds an option where Lakesiders could fund this and accrue the interest from it and maybe even give back part of that interest, and it stays, all that interest expense stays within Lakeside and doesn't go to banks? Thanks for taking the questions.
Yeah, do you want to jump in on the bonds piece?
Yeah, that is certainly a possibility. The cost of issuing those may be of concern, but that's sort of in the longer term, the 10-year borrowing idea. It could be through a number of vehicles. It wouldn't have to be a bank loan. It could be through a bonding process where Lakesiders would be the owners of the bonds. But we really need to know, does Lakeside generally want to go into this much debt? And from a bond standpoint, I don't think you get as much flexibility in your borrowing as you do with a bank loan. Because we'll start out with borrowing with small amounts. It'll grow to about $2.5 million and then shrink off over over the 10-year period of time. So we'd have to understand whether we could have that same type of flexibility with bonds that we would have with a bank loan to manage the interest better. Please.
It's actually about 3. I'll lay them all out there, and if you can't remember the third one, I'll repeat. So that $4 million figure that you've been using for illustrative purposes, does that come from a true contractor, or is that your engineering firm giving you those numbers? Secondly, are you doing every street in Lakeside for the sake of uniformity? Because on my street, I don't think there's any flooding and the asphalt looks intact. Thirdly, if some streets need all kinds of new drains and reshaping and that versus simple paving, are you spreading that cost out over all of us as opposed to the streets that need the most work? Those are my 3 questions.
Let me start with the last one.
Well, hold on. A fourth is, why could you not do this in 2 years? If it's in the fall, I know there's year-rounders here, but for the most part, there's a lot of places that are closed up. You would save some money. I think if in 4 years the inflation rate is going to be so bad that what you think is $4 million is going to be $6 million. So I'm for a 2-year plan myself.
Well, I think we'd all like to do a 2-year plan if we could afford it, and if the pavers thought they could do it in that period of time. CDE Engineering has, I'm going to try to answer many of your questions, not one-on-one, but by combination. CDE Engineering, in creating their cost estimate, has gone out to local pavers to get a sense of what number they thought would take to pave all of Lakeside. And they've come back with a number well less than the $4 million. As I said, we've added a contingency, substantial contingency, because we all have been involved in our own construction projects. My team members, and Jim Shelley, who is my co-chair, team members are largely engineers and contractors who've done this type of thing, and they all know that this is an estimate, and you really don't know a good number until you finish paying the last bill. Things show up that you didn't expect. So we've tried to cover that through a contingency process. In terms of spreading this over the entirety of Lakeside, that's the plan. Is when CDE has done their work, and it's been confirmed by our engineers and contractors on our team. In our last presentation from the Streets and Drainage Task Force, we showed a map of how streets had been marked good, fair, and poor. That was CDE's work. And there were 3 colors, and what we had on that map was those colors were interspersed throughout Lakeside. A little bit worse on the east, but not really significant. And it was block by block, as you say. In front of your house, maybe just fine. But while they're doing a 3/4 mile stretch down one of the streets, they're all telling us, do it all now so you don't have to come back and bring this and have restarting charges and things like that. 2 years rather than longer period of time. Every one of the pavers has said this is going to take at least 3 years, 3 seasons in the fall. We don't trust the fall weather, just like we don't trust the spring weather. You don't have access to the summer. So we think from a planning purpose, and Fred Selling, who's on my committee, may have comments back here to add to this. They're saying plan for 4 years. It's going to be your best product if you do that. Fred, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, good job. Was that all the questions too? Okay, good.
Way in the back. Oh, is there one in front? I'm sorry.
Got one up front too at some point. So.
Hey, Dave, Todd, thanks for all the heavy lifting you guys are doing. I know both of you have extensive finance backgrounds, but this is actually kind of a quasi-engineering question, and it builds on the previous question. We know we have stormwater issues.
Yes.
The committee's looked at it. Pleased to hear that you've got a color-coded map. There are, in my judgment, pretty serious stormwater issues on the west side of the community. You know, when you look just, well, I won't get into those details, but my question is this, and it's an engineering question. What, in the 4 million, what are we gonna do, in plain English, engineering terms, what are we gonna do to address the present stormwater issues that we know we have, other than paving?
There are many solutions that can be employed. I am not the expert on the stormwater arrangements, but some of these would be make sure that the present drains are cleaned out, for example. I mean, that should be done anyhow, and it's being done for the most part, but we need to maximize use of the present drainage system. You'll recall that when the current paving was done was in 1991, 92. It was done by the county as part of a sewer project. I don't think they went through an enormous topographical map detail of where the water goes. And I think in many cases, they just put new pavement on top of what was there already, be that gravel or pavement. We need to dig up at least one layer of pavement, if not more, in all of these, so we get the right topography, geometry, I guess. Fred, I don't remember the right word for that. Profile, so that you know, generally water flows downhill, except at Mystery Hill when it didn't float uphill or something like that a long time ago. So we need to make sure that the water's flowing downhill, and they have very detailed topographic maps that's been done already. They have that information. They'll be using that in addition to their on-site review of things. And the reason we're asking people to take photographs and send those in is so we make sure they have looked at all of these particular situations. I'm going to leave it to the engineers who know how to deal with these matters. Fred, is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
That's part of what CDE is going to do. They've been charged to look at the drainage. So when they complete their field work, they'll know. And actually, the earlier recommendation had a couple of specific street profile grade adjustments that they thought were needed. That study only included the corridor, so it was only a few streets. But we've talked to CDE about that, and they'll be looking at those things. They'll come back to the committee with their recommendations, and then the committee will look at those. So there's a couple of ways that'll get addressed.
And Bob, it's a great comment because it gets into really, as we think about this whole project, so a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, this is the Streets and Drainage Task Force. So this isn't just about streets. And so we are thinking about the drainage piece of that. Number two, that's why we have the contingency built in. So Dave commented, I mean, it's 25% of the cost. And so as we learn things as we go throughout the project, it's going to be to address and hopefully assess some of these different things. This also gets into the earlier comment about, things are okay in front of my house, and so should my cost be lower? Things can be great in front of my house, but then my water runs right into your house. And so it's really one of those things as a community where you can't look at it in isolation and think about how your street looks or how the property looks, how the street looks in front of your property. It's how we all benefit as a community from the work that's being done here. And this is something that really helps our property values over a longer period of time. So this is an investment. When water was put into Lakeside, when gas was put into Lakeside, those were all things that benefited future generations of our community. And so that's really what we're hoping to accomplish here. And then the last piece is, again, Dave's talked about this, there are knowns and there are unknowns. So if there are things that you know about but haven't been communicated to Streets and Drainage, to management, let us know, because we can't prepare for those, we can't plan for those if we don't know about them. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, I'd let Tom Hanselman, 409 West 4th. I really appreciate the work and all the time and the effort that you guys have put in. There's one thing that kind of confuses me, and I know you can only work with what you're given, okay? So the finance team gave you a number of $100,000 for the assessments, if that's all they can give to you. All right, to me that number doesn't make sense, that maybe I don't have the right information, maybe I don't have anything, but when I look at information I've been given in the past, that when the assessments were at .308, they were collecting about $900,000 a year. Now they're collecting, since the assessments are raised to .491, now they're collecting 1.7. Okay, there's a difference in there of 800,000, and they've been collecting that for over a year. I just don't understand how they can only give you 100,000, and I know you're restrained by what they tell you. So, I mean, that's what my question is. Maybe I don't know
Tom,
the numbers.
let me ask Charles to respond to that, and if I want to add to it, I'm going to add to it, because I have a response to it as well.
I do too, so you might get, you might get answers from everyone.
Well, maybe y'all can just save me the pain. I mean, if you got the answer already.
Under the weather too.
Yeah. So we did raise the assessments. Prior to raising the assessments, we were tracking a deficit every year and allowable expenses that's to there.
If I looked at that number that you said you were tracking at, from the information that I got from you, it was around $200,000. So that's still $600,000 there.
You got.
Go ahead.
You got. Let me finish. So when we looked at what the assessments need to be, because a part of that is, and I think when people hear streets and drainage, they just think paving repairs or street repairs, and sanitation, just trash or that. But that's also our staff costs that's embedded in there, contractor costs, and all that's allowable expenses towards there. And so when we evaluated those expenses and looked at all the methodology and what was the percentages of what was allowable, say 70% of grounds, 46% of maintenance, and so forth. When staff cost goes up, those numbers, that number increase, because you still got a bucket of that percentage. If you're you're going to miss something in that. So when we evaluated that, that's what we did, was looked at that. So that way we had a dollar break-even point. But what we added into that budget when we raised the assessments was $200,000 a year in road work that we could start allocating towards redoing streets and pavement. That was before we knew what the number was going to be, before we got the MKS case study back completely, and so forth. We just knew we had to start doing some work towards that, so we want to start building that in there. And so now that we have this number, we're still looking at, all right, we're going to put this towards this project, but that $200,000 that we had budgeted, we still want to start putting that aside because we know we're going to always have road work, right? So we're looking at more of a split out of that budget of what we put towards actual street repair to then split towards this project, plus to start building that surplus so we can have future road repair, so it won't be such a stretch when we have to redo it again. So within all that, now we can get into we're going to get into the numbers at the August forum, and we'll lay it out in details. The other thing we're going to do is once we give everybody a complete understanding, we're going to build into our habit of looking at the methodology every couple years to make sure that everything is accurately charged correctly, so that way if there is less money spent here, then where does that money go towards? And we'll have all that on detailed. You'll also get a detailed report out in your assessment, so you'll see that in your billing each year. So those are things that we're working on to make sure we're transparent in that. Also, we will sit down with the LPOA executive leadership on a yearly basis and give them all those details, so that way your LPOA reps will also be able to see the full accounting on those assessments every year. So that's what the steps that we're going to take to be transparent in that. But your calculations also included a raise in our maintenance department, our grounds department, and so all those allowable expenses are in there. This fiscal year, we're doing a time audit on the grounds maintenance, so that we'll know exactly how much time is actually spent on stuff that's expendable towards those assessments. And once we have that, that's just something that we're going to do to make sure we're truing up and shoring up those expenses. Because right now, all we have in that methodology is, and I'm quoting this off the top of my head, 71% of grounds, 46% of maintenance of that budget, and that's a total budget of each one of those departments that those expenses are allocated towards. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate the color there. And I appreciate the way you framed the question. What I can say from a board perspective is, I don't want to say we've pushed, but we've had a conversation around that number because we want to make sure that that's the number that can be. And the other piece that I mentioned is, don't get married to any of the numbers that are in in this presentation. We've asked Charles and the team to scrub these numbers. As we get more information from the time audit, there's the potential that there could be more available funds, there could be less available funds based on labor costs. So these are the estimates that we're starting with. We're challenging, we're trying to think through all of them, and they're all subject to change, but it's a great comment, it's a great thought, and we appreciate, kind of the call out there.
Can I continue to respond to Tom? We're not trying to beat you down, Tom, but we've made the assessment accounting as hard as possible to understand, and we need to fix that. and I'm working with Samuel and his team on making sure that we can present an assessment accounting over the last several years that you may or may not like, but at least it's going to be as accurate as we can get it, with an understanding of the allocation methodologies that we're using, to the extent that, as Charles says, certain amounts of this account and certain amount of that account are really sanitary or are really streets and need to be part of it. We plan to show you that. It's taken some time to do it. It's not done yet, and I have a pile of papers on my desk in my cottage. I'm not supposed to be working, but I am, I guess, at this point, trying to make sure that your question is answered adequately and appropriately. So we don't have the answer yet. We're working on it. That's a terrible response, you know, the check's in the mail type of thing. But we'll have something by the time we have to make decisions. And what Todd said is, to the extent that the number is larger or smaller, it will impact each of these types of options percentage-wise or dollar-wise the same. So it won't change the relative point of this option versus that option. It'll change the magnitude of the number, but it won't change whether one's higher or lower.
Rob Hickson, 208 East 4th Street. My question, first editorial one, I agree with the gentleman that proposed the bonding issue might be a way to go. I think you're going to see a number of people hidden under the stones here. They're more than willing to advance those monies. I think you'd see the bond issue gobbled up quickly. So anyway, that's the editorial comment. My question is, I hate redoing things again. The only thing in my life I didn't redo is my lovely wife, marriage of 37 years. I love you. But what I'd like to know, for those of us who are contemplating some type of rehab, redo, remodeling, whatever it is, what type of coordination, collaboration, consternation should we do? Who should we communicate with in terms of working through potential sewer, water with our house to the street? I don't want to have to redo this in 2 years.
Great question. You would send those to us. We will try our best to communicate what the timeline is on each street. I know we're starting from east to west, and we'll give, as often as we update that schedule, we'll put that out through Lpoa so that people will know what that schedule is for planning purposes. We do know that this work at the soonest could start fall of '24, and so if you're planning something based on where you are and what that will take, that's where it would start at. But east to west, and then we'll let you know the schedules as we know those construction timelines.
Go ahead, please.
Richard Hahn, 401 Maple, and I'm sorry to belabor any points. Thank you so much again to the task force for moving us off of a $30 million bond issue. Compliments of MKSK. My great concern is the board was pretty much, that project was on the launch pad. And yes, it was. Yes, it was. I'm sorry. My concern is this. On August 4, the board is going to approve an increase in assessments and funding of this project. Our next meeting, committee forms August 5. So you're going to be reporting, the next information we're going to get is going to be as to final decisions made by the board. And Charles, the detail about expenses of assessments will be meaningless then. We'll either feel good or bad, but this decision will have been made as to what future assessments are going to be. We've asked for nearly a year about the prospect of borrowing from the endowment. No one has answered that yet, and I assume that that's off the table and people are just not honest enough to say, but you could borrow from the endowment, pay a very generous interest rate, and we'd all keep that in-house. And that's not been considered or mentioned. We've asked for it. So I'm frustrated by the questions. And Dave, as much as I respect you, you say you've got a stack of papers looking at charges to assessments. When you're making long-term decisions on August 4, the board will approve this project. Everything else after that will be just pure information, meaningless discussion. And we're frustrated, some of us are frustrated by the lack of information that is given to us in a timely manner. And I think the last point is on the Grinley water feature, we were adamant that the shovel would not hit the dirt until the funds were in hand. We've moved away from that. We're talking freely now about taking on more debt. We also currently have over $1 million in debt that has to be refinanced, I believe, by September, is it? And any talk about how we're going to handle that? We operated on a debt-free basis for years. That was always the mantra, and now we're just freely talking about long-term debt. And a number of us are concerned that we should not take on long-term debt and carry long-term debt and jeopardize the future of Lakeside.
When we talked with Jane about the idea of long-term debt, she went, "Debt?" She wasn't thrilled about the whole debt idea. Let's talk about what the right thing how to use an endowment. You may or may not know that I was the board treasurer. I was in Todd's position a number of years ago for several years, and we thought about these matters then, and they continue to think about them, and that the endowment's not off the table, but it's certainly not a preferred option when there are other people who are willing to give you money to do maintenance. This is maintenance, okay? These are funds. Had we all been braver years ago and raised assessments earlier years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. Okay, we'd have the funds to do this, but we don't have it. So we're trying to do a maintenance function, and the question becomes, all right, out of the $9 million in the endowment, which is there to protect Lakeside's long-term future, how much of that should we use now to do a short-term project, which there's another strong vehicle which was set up to recover those costs, which is the assessment.
The question was borrowing against
I said, I know, but by borrowing against the assessment, if Lakeside is unable to pay for that somehow or another, the assessment is lower, or the endowment is lower. Is that the right?
Can I just So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm here to listen, and so nothing's been decided at this point. You know, there's nothing predetermined about what's going to happen at the board meeting. We're using the next month to hear ideas, so nothing's off the table. We're evaluating all of the comments that are out there. You know, I tried to make the comment that during Sam's presentation, you know, the room applauded for no use of the line of credit. I heard that, and so I hear the comments that are there. We're putting all these into consideration. We're thinking about all of them. Please continue to give us your constructive feedback. Nothing's been ruled out at this point.
Is there a loan restructuring that needs to take place? I saw you shaking your head.
So the $1 million of debt, I believe that was referenced, those are all securitized properties, usually mortgages that we have. There are a few properties that come up, I think, at the end of '24 that are maybe around $300,000, and these are ballpark numbers. I don't have them all right off the top of my head. Sam probably knows these. But there's not $1 million of debt that's coming due by the end of the year.
And remember, the first two options listed in those charts were pay as you go, no borrowing. If you borrow from the endowment, you've reduced the endowment, so you've reduced the amount that the endowment can give to the Lakeside budget, and you haven't created a way to make up for that loss.
And this is the exact dialogue that we want in the community. We want your thoughts, we want your perspective, and so it's helpful for us to hear this, and we're trying to get a sense of where people land on these different issues. So thank you for the feedback.
Is that all, folks?
And I'm going to stick around if anybody has any additional questions or comments. Certainly please, reach out to me, reach out to Dave, reach out to Charles. But really, we appreciate the feedback. There's a lot when we go through the process that we're involved in spreadsheets and we're involved in numbers. We can't think through everything, and so when you present different ideas, it's an aha moment. I'm looking back at Gwen. She gave me a great aha moment when I presented this to the committee. So please, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everybody, for your time.